Welcome to another edition of Strange New Pod. This is the outline. It's a thick boy. It might as well be a legal document. I am your Fleet Admiral and host, Julian Brown, and court, yes, is indeed in session. I'm joined by the best bridge crew. This side of a Vulcan outburst, we have Vice Admiral Eric, who did make sure there was a live stream of this trial. And yes, that is a dig at Trump. Sorry, not sorry. Commander Hawk is here, ready with that law and order knowledge.
Bump, bump.
Bum, bum. I have the sound effect somewhere on here, but it's there. Captain Giraffe is here, ready to gush over Yatiti Badaki. Did I get her name right, Giraffe? Did I fuck it up?
Always.
Yes, I got it right. Oh, I'm happy I got it right. By the way, as are we all. She was fucking amazing in this episode.
Don't say fuck.
Oh, wait, we can't say fuck.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Too much, right?
What are you doing? People on the chat are already saying I'm mean. I said nothing.
No.
I'm just here. By the way, I have a question.
What's your
Why
question?
is it written like spotted in big and giraffe
Where?
on the windows?
Oh, I think it's all big in the windows now, no?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
cool. Proceed.
Yeah. No? No, we've been saying fuck a lot for the past 3 years, so I don't know where people have been, but that's what we do on this show.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. And finally, Lieutenant Commander MC is here, who was with me in Messenger weeks ago, gushing over the freaking gorgeous dress uniforms in this episode. I know you're already thinking about making one.
Yeah, I am. But also, I mean, Nira's dresses, I mean, just saying, like, this
It's so
episode
good.
had it going on.
It is. It does. It is. Welcome back and welcome aboard, guys. Joining us on our view screen tonight are our very good friends, the good folks from the Legal Geeks, Josh Gilliland and Nari Ely. Guys, welcome back. We couldn't dream of doing this episode without you. It had to be done. How have you guys been?
We've been well. We've been busy. And
I'm so glad to be back for this episode in particular.
it's like we do. I listen, so it's like I feel like I haven't left, but it's good to actually catch up. And I mean, Giraffe and I interact. I saw her at WonderCon, so yeah.
We're gonna see each other at San Diego Comic-Con.
Josh, I like how you went very, like, when I first asked you how you guys have been, you went very Romulan, like, we've been good. We've been busy. We've been busy. And Nari was like, I'm happy to be back. Let's go. This is how it's done. I love it. Davey in the chat is already pumped. Can't say what a high. Can I say what a high I am on after this week's episode? It was so good. Josh, Nari, it's so awesome to have you guys back. It's been a bit, though. The last time we had you guys on, I think, was August of last year. Oh, no, it was even before that. It was July. We were getting ready for Carol's trial, and we were guessing about a little under a year, what Una's trial was going to be like. So, for the folks who may not have been here for the episode that you guys guessed it on last time, what are the Legal Geeks all about?
So we started in July 2012. Founded by Jessica Meterson and myself, and we were a blog and podcast where we discuss legal issues from pop culture. So that's the medium to teach. And we do Comic-Con, I was just at Nerd Night San Francisco on Tuesday, where I discussed Star Trek law and had a rip-roaring good time. Yes, that audio is available on our podcast channel. So if you look up The Legal Geeks, you can see us there. TheLegalGeeks.com has all kinds of posts where we jump into complex issues like assumption of risk for wearing a red shirt, or is the Horta an endangered species? Those are the hard-hitting questions that we get into. And this is going to surprise you. A lot of people who read comic books or watched Star Trek as a kid grew up and became lawyers. Many are called Your Honor. So it's just a funny thing that happens, that people who like to read and think and, explore complex issues do become lawyers and judges.
Can I say that I was at a event in San Diego for the MUN, and I texted the judge. I was like, I think the keynote speaker is one of the Legal Geeks. And I was like, because I was looking, I was like, I know that voice, I know that person, like from where? And I was such in a work mood, I was like, why do I know that person? So yeah, everywhere, they're everywhere.
So that legal geek you referred to was Circuit Judge John Owens of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals,
Yes.
appointed by President Obama.
Yeah.
Brilliant jurist, loves Star Trek, and can speak at length about deep Trek issues. We did a podcast with him for the 40th anniversary of Wrath of Khan.
Oh, nice.
Where, because again, he's just a little older than me, and we grew up in the same area. So I honestly believe we probably were at the same place at the same time in much younger versions of ourselves. And it's neat to go do cons with him. And just, again, being a lawyer, it's nice reading his opinions. It's like, good job. Good. I mean,
I definitely got some like street cred when I was like, I know him. And it was like, you know him? I was like, yeah, but from geek stuff.
He's a very neat man. He's a very neat man. And his family is awesome. So his wife and kids go to Comic-Con with him, and they're awesome.
Nice. Nari, we were talking off mic. We're going to get into a lot of law stuff tonight. And I know with the introduction that you guys, I think, need to get a bit of a disclaimer off your chest very quickly so everybody knows.
Absolutely. So while Josh and I are both practicing lawyers, nothing we say on this podcast should be construed as legal advice. If you are being court-martialed for violating Starfleet regulations, you should seek your own lawyer. And additionally, nothing that we say reflects the views of our employer. There are personal, individual views and should be construed as nothing else.
There it is.
We need that recorded for us.
We do.
Can we
really do.
Julian, can we say that every beginning of the podcast?
No, because you know what? If we do, we're just going to get more hate mail about it.
Like people are calling me equal opportunity mean giraffe. So
wait, who called you equal opportunity mean giraffe? Is it in the chat?
I'm not technically mean because I'm mean all the time. So it's just normal me. So is that mean?
No, but
you're not mean. You're French.
I will say.
Are you f***ing kidding me?
I actually think that because you are just mean, equal opportunity mean giraffe works, right?
Mm-hmm.
It
Absolutely.
works. I like
it.
I like that. I like it.
One day we're gonna review that episode, I promise.
Indeed.
We're gonna get there.
Guys.
Yes to the Q&A who just asked that in chat.
Will there be a Q&A after the pod? That depends on how late we
Sure,
go.
at 2 a.m. Let's go because we're going to take forever to review that thing. So.
Nobody else has anything important to do.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe hey, listen, if Josh and Ari are up to it and we don't go terribly long, which I think we will, we'll leave it up to them. Patrons, speaking of going late, we hope you understand with guests, we are going to move right along with some very brief news and then get this thing going. Know that we appreciate and love all of you. We'll read your names next week unless we have guests, which we might. So sorry. We love you. You guys rock. Speaking of you, our patrons, our beautiful, amazing patron collective, we are going to do our table read. Yes, finally, it's happening. I swear. I promise.
It's been a while.
It's been a long road. Sometime in the next 10 days, that's going to happen. We're locking down a date, but I will do a live sometime when I'm in San Diego. I'm leaving on Saturday on Insta to draw which characters we're all going to be playing in. Who wants to read what episode we're doing? Giraffe, I know.
I think it's Giraffe.
Oh, she's the one who doesn't want us to go late. Just learn this out there.
Yeah, I know, right?
Gonna do all words is a stage. Da, da, da.
So exciting. Cannot wait for that. We also may have a very, very, very special guest confirming that for that one. So stay tuned. Joining us for that table read will be one of our amazing patron collective members at our 10 forward level. And that is member Sean Temper. We drew you today. You were drawn as our guest table read member.
And if you don't want to, bad for you.
Well, no, if you don't want it, I still have the names on the wheel. So please message me and I will draw a new name. We know some people aren't comfortable doing video. So message me and I will draw a new name. But you're a winner and you'll get to do this awesome table read with us. So Yeah. By the way, Josh, I love your shirt.
Thank you. You can't have it, but I can tell you where to get one for yourself.
Tell
And
me.
that is, it's Heroes and Villains, because they make great products. I own multiple shirts and socks from them. And this is the art for the Enterprise blowing up and Search for Spock, which was, I saw in a drive-in long ago. And I went home
awesome.
very depressed, going, they blew up the Enterprise. Because it was like watching hope die. And getting... But the key message of how do you define victory? And, Bones' comment to Kirk, you did what you had to do, turn death into a fighting chance for life. Because that's the key part. Kirk lost everything and still did the right thing. So, I got the shirt. It's one of my favorites.
It's really good. I, too, tonight am wearing a brand new Space Dock Heroes and Villains shirt. They got the Strange New Worlds license from Star Trek and Paramount, so clap, clap, clap for them. We are not sponsored by them. The reason we're bringing this up is because we'd like to be. So, if you'd like,
we would too.
Yeah, Legal Geeks too. You have two people, two podcasts who would like sponsorships. We have good listenership. So if you would like to see them sponsor us, send them a message. You never know what could happen. We set them some messages. Hopefully we can make something happen. We want to be sponsored by them. They have
women cut t-shirts.
But they do need women cuts t-shirts. That's very true.
For Star Trek, yes.
Yes.
I hear they don't have enough women's cut t-shirts.
Oh, I heard that too. That's weird.
Yeah.
I have all this money, and I'm just trying to find some women cut Star Trek t-shirts.
Yeah, I have so much money that I don't know what to do with.
Oh, no, you're not helping the image of lawyers. So I know you're corporate counsel now, but I own Marvel stuff from them, Star Wars stuff from them, Star Trek stuff from them, and I've done lots of Christmas and birthday gifts from them too.
That's awesome.
I popped links for Josh's.
They have these makeup purses or whatever, and they have them like Jedi and Ahsoka. I'm like, make a Star Trek one. I'd buy it so fast.
I popped the links for Julian and Josh's shirt in the chat below, so you can click on it and just go in. Not sponsored links. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
I have the Han Solo backpack from them too. So
nice.
Yeah, so and a Mandalorian one. Like, they make great stuff. So
the amount of free advertising that they just got.
I know, right?
If you buy anything because of the podcast, please put it in
somewhere.
It in the
notes. Put it in the notes. Strange New Pod told you about them, so we can actually then maybe get a discount code for them to give to you. Yeah,
showed you all the things.
That would be awesome. Enough of free advertising. You have one more thing?
Look at keychain.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's a nice keychain too.
This is a Star Wars one. I got the Star Trek one, but yeah, this is for getting into the office. So
nice. Well, you have to you can use the Force to get into the office. That's right. That's going to do it for news this week. We'll have more next week. We really got to dive into this one. Let's do that. Our format's going to be a bit different this week. So our amazing guests have a lot to shine because they are the experts on this and we're not. So we are going to talk about this one. It is our review of Ad Astra per Aspera, and our deep dive into that. Our order tonight is going to go Josh and Ari, whoever decides they want to go first, or whatever's in the notes, followed by Hawk, Giraffe, Eric, and myself. Let's go right from the beginning.
Julian?
Yes?
I am also here.
It wouldn't be a show if I didn't skip one of you. Let me redo that. Hawk, Giraffe, MC, Eric, and then followed by myself. Thank you, MC. Let's start with the offer, right? The episode begins with Captain Batel making Uner. Who's Uner?
Uner.
Una with a particular
twin.
type of accent.
Yeah, let's get the Uner over here. Fargo much? The episode begins with Captain Patel making Una an offer, plead guilty to offering fraudulent enlistment data and withholding her genetic modifications and accept dishonorable dismissal, no jail time, no exile. Una could still live as a Federation citizen, and Starfleet would seal her records and look the other way. Nari and Josh, this is pretty standard, right? To offer a deal before the proceedings. They want to avoid a trial. And then for you guys, after they go, what are your thoughts on this brief scene and Una being like, dude, you're supposed to be my, defending me. Let's sidebar this conversation. But Josh, Nari, what about what happened with this offer here?
So they crap on public defenders, and that is grossly offensive. One of our legal geeks, who's a public defender in Portland, texted me after watching this with, like, just enraged in 3 minutes into the episode, because they're the part of the guardians of civil society, going through, getting to Gideon and Miranda and all of the civil rights cases that gave us right to trial and protected people from the state and getting arrested, just to show this feckless, ineffective public defender. And Una making the comment, well, he works for you. First off, no, like, DAs and public defenders don't hang out. They're not playing racquetball together. And it's just, again, I was very frustrated.
Yeah, if I could add to that. So just as like a little asterisk, like, yes, like public defenders are funded by the government. That's why they're public. And so our prosecutors are also funded by the government, but they have totally different organizations. Josh is right. They also usually don't hang out. And I will say, like, obviously, like, there are going to be some not great public defenders out there, but all of the ones that I've met, and certainly majority of them, are very talented and hardworking and usually overworked, dramatically overworked lawyers who handle, like, literally hundreds of cases at a time. And it's important, like, our system, this is like super basic, but like our system of justice is adversarial. You have one side arguing, you have the other side arguing, and a jury or a judge decides which one wins. And that only works if you have an adversary on each side. And so the reason, like, public defenders are absolutely critical when it comes to access to justice. And if anything, like, if you do think that public defenders sometimes drop the ball, it's because we probably should fund them more.
Well, and that's what I wanted to follow up with you guys on, right? Like, is that maybe the reason that this episode shit on them a little bit? Because are they trying to show that even in Starfleet, in this perfect utopia, like, public defenders even there aren't being, I guess, there's no money, but like,
wait,
supported?
like, just to add to your question, like, is Starfleet also, right?
Yeah, so then the last bit is that if this is a military legal proceeding. So in these situations, we actually have a legal geek who's former JAG. The military provides you with a defense attorney who is also JAG. And so that was also maybe what the comment about, you work for them or for her was getting at, was that, JAG lawyers serve as both defense and prosecution, not at the same time, but they do often do both. The interesting thing about this, though, is that typically this actually has resulted in a very defendant-friendly justice system in the military, contrasted with, like, often one of the principal failings of our civilian justice system is how defendant-unfriendly it can be. This does sometimes lead to some issues. Like, we've had a lot of reforms around this because of being defendant-friendly in the context of, like, sexual harassment or assault allegations. But I just want to note that that's not necessarily a problem. It would be wildly against military regulation if she were literally his boss, like, in the same chain of command. That would be a problem. But if what she's referring to is that you both work for Starfleet, that's usually what happens.
Gotcha.
I mean, there are enough horror stories of public defenders in Texas falling asleep and innocent people being convicted and then executed, because that's how Texas rolls. But that's one state out of 50, and that's not how all of us roll here. So, like, California counties, again, there's 58 counties in California. There's a lot. We're a giant state. And I could be wrong because shifting demographics, so forgive me. But the point is, it's like Santa Clara County, those public defenders are making like $160 a year. They're working their tails off to ensure that the state is doing their job in prosecuting anyone. And having friends who've been, public defenders in Sacramento County and Santa Clara County, they take their job seriously. They work hard. And, the last couple governors have made sure that public defenders are people getting elevated to be judges. So I don't like the idea that public defenders are getting knocked on because they are damn good at their jobs.
I do like the charitable interpretation here, though, which is that maybe trying to highlight that, the Federation is not perfect, not even by the time of the end of the most recent series. And this is like 100 years before some of those. So yeah, I like the interpretation that it's trying to highlight that even in this future, they still need a little more money for the Defender's Office.
Yeah, and
No money. There's no money in the Federation, Nari.
More resources, assign more people.
Yeah. There's only so many hours in the day to do stuff. So
it's like, I wanted to take up the violin. It's like, well, that's cute. Why don't you think about representing people? So anyway, just a lot of high blood pressure over that.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Guys, what were your thoughts on this moment and Una kind of being, cross with her counsel? What was our order? It's a long Hawk, Giraffe, MC, Eric, me.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it was a knock at public defenders in general. That I think it was more kind of a foreshadowing that there was more at stake in this trial than anybody was willing to admit. That Starfleet had a lot of interest in making it go away and would have assigned her a JAG officer who was maybe a little inexperienced and more prone to a plea deal in that, just to encourage her to sweep, help them to sweep it under the rug. All in all, it was still a great scene, right? That there was that line that Patel offered to Una on that, and we thank you for your service, which comes off very pat and condescending, especially if you're talking to enlisted personnel or veterans and that, and you're the one deciding if they get health care or whatever. Overall, I really enjoyed the scene.
Yeah. Trev?
Yeah, I was surprised also at the guy being like, take the plea deal, and like her saying that it was working for them. I was like, that's weird. Like, how does that work even, because I was expecting Starfleet to want to have a fast trial, but something that is like ship shape. So like nothing comes back to, bite them in the ass, basically. So like something like this would be like a bit weird, but like I got it. Like I saw it right away that it was like, so she needed another lawyer, that was setting up I need to find you somebody better. And yeah, maybe it was not very elegant. It was a bit clumsy, but I bought it. I was like, sure, that dude, he's bad. I don't know. He doesn't know what he's doing. So yeah, but it was definitely, I like the fact that it set up what was going on very fast. Yeah. Because, in like 5 minutes we were into the story and we were looking for the new lawyer and so on. So it was efficient, but sure.
MC?
First of all, I'm just going to say that Davey has thrown out a challenge. Davey from Trexpert Quiz would like the Legal Geeks to come on and do a Trek law quiz. So Gauntlet's been thrown out for you
the
guys.
The Trexpert is awesome.
It is
it's so much fun.
They're family. Like you guys should do it. It would be awesome.
But
so
yes,
like rules of engagement and okay, sure, game on.
This scene felt very standard to me for somebody who's watched a lot of Law and Order. This the deal gets put out, and of course gets thrown out. It's kind of a necessity to put in there. I did not really catch the whole problem with the defender thing because it's something that I'm honestly used to seeing on on legal television shows. I'm going to bring this up now because honestly, it involves stuff that happens later in the episode, but there's just so much to unpack in those later scenes that it's easier to bring up now. The biggest flaw I have with this episode is that Una, who is somebody who seems to always be in control of things, put herself magnificently out of control, considering we find out that she is the one who turned herself in. The fact that she didn't set anything up beforehand, knowing that they were going to come after her, I feel like that was a misstep on her part. And I mean, maybe like she turned herself in the heat of the moment, like for some reason, like she was feeling away.
I wonder if she did that because she believed in Starfleet so much that she thought she could.
Nah.
I don't know. That's the only thing. It's possible.
I think
what I feel too.
she wanted to put herself in such a corner that
without a plan.
Her friend
Yeah.
would come and rescue her.
Yeah. I actually thought like the best thing she could have done was like from the West Wing when Bartlett comes out as having MS. It's like going to the lawyer and be like, okay, here's all of the stuff I did. I'm going to turn I'm going to go public with what with how I lied, and like have that defense ready before you actually get to the point of, making a deal with the Federation.
Gosh,
So
it's
it's not
really good
a legal
plug to seek
advice.
legal advice.
Yeah. But I mean, going what Eric said, like I think that she sent like whatever she sent to Starfleet directly following when she did her personal log, deleted it, and she's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do this personal log, and I'm actually gonna send it to them. Here I am. This is me. So,
Like the greatest show, man.
Yep. MC, did you have anything else?
No, that was about it. I mean, if she had done it earlier, also she wouldn't have implicated Pike, like,
Right.
because that was a huge issue.
Right. True. Yep. Eric?
Yeah, I'm the same as MC. I've watched so many like Law and Order and random law shows that I was just like, oh, it's the scene that they're gonna try and get rid of a lawyer and then get another one later. Especially when we saw the trailers and we knew that another lawyer was gonna come in and defend her. I thought the guy who played the lawyer was very good at being meek and like timid. I thought that was really funny. Ian Stewart, you did a great job for what little you had. So
Yeah, he definitely sounded nice.
He was nice. He was nice, which is exactly what Una does not need, right? Not to say again, like I don't want to shit on public defenders either, because I'm sure he was very capable, but I don't think that Una necessarily needed nice. She needed someone who was gonna be a, like
she needed a
for her.
zealous advocate.
Yes, a zealous
Zealous
advocate. Thank you, Nari. Yes, exactly. Let's move on to the charming environment as Captain Pike put it on the Illyrian planet. The episode kind of starts right where episode 201 began. Pike reaching his destination to speak with Nira, trying to convince her to take Una's case because Una contacted her, Pike contacted her, wouldn't return any calls, so he takes the 2.5-day shuttle ride on the brand new fancy shuttles to go plead his case. Nira's hesitant for a variety of reasons, including a just general disdain for the Federation and Starfleet and their archaic laws against genetic modification. Yeah. So, there's definitely also something that happened between her and Una in the past. I think most of us are convinced that they were
Lesbians.
They were definitely lovers at some point. I think
1,000%.
pretty obvious. What do you think about this scene, Josh and Ari?
A variety of issues popped out immediately. One is while he's waiting in the lobby, there's the comment about she has a deposition and an arraignment. It's rare but not impossible for a lawyer to have both a civil practice and a criminal practice. Generally speaking, you pick one lane or the other. There are some people who do both, but there is a higher malpractice risk when you do that. Now, Nari does have a point that, why don't you hit that and then I want to jump back.
Oh yeah, sure. So like the depot and the arraignment, I think there's two possibilities. One is that she does white collar criminal usually, but that doesn't really help her in this circumstance. It's like the most likely crossover. The other one though is that it actually is possible, but not super likely to take depositions in criminal cases. Depositions to anybody that does civil litigation is bread and butter. It's one of the principal ways that you get information from the other side or from your own witnesses, etc. But in criminal practice, which is very different, there's a lot of, by law, like everybody turning over what they have. The prosecution is supposed to turn over everything they've got. And so you don't normally need to take a deposition, but it's possible that a witness with material testimony you think might not be available for trial for some reason to testify. Like, they could be really sick and about to keel over or something like that. So it is possible, but unlikely. So that's what I had to say about that.
Yeah, and to be chronological, there's a beautiful passage in California Business and Professional Code section 6068, subsection H, as in hotel. And that is, a lawyer is to never reject for any consideration personal to himself or herself the cause of the defenseless or the oppressed. And when you have the state going after someone because of who and what they are, and that they do not have an adequate defense, we're not, as lawyers, we're not supposed to go like, yeah, forget about it. They're on their own. Like, the old,
I don't think I would win that case. Maybe I won't take it.
Yeah. There's the old Shakespeare quote, the first thing we do is kill all the lawyers. Yeah, that's what you do when you start a dictatorship and you want to plow over civil rights. You kill all the people who are going to be in your way, and those are attorneys. So, yeah, our job is to represent those who are in legal jeopardy. Una is in legal jeopardy with something radically complex, and they will destroy her life in the process. That puts her into that, that term of art for someone who is defenseless or oppressed. And that's the time that you're supposed to pony up and stand for what is right.
Nice. Hawk.
I do love this scene, and we talk about, Una needing someone to zealously represent her in that. I mean, this is what we see in Pike, making his way to that office in that breather, almost running out of oxygen.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
You can continue on this point. Michael Kwan writes, "It was mean what Pike did to Neera's secretary. Never mess with the staff." If you want to keep going.
Part of me was wondering if he adjusted that breather a little bit just to ramp up the jeopardy of his situation there, and to get her into action. And that, even still, it managed to get him into the office, and that I like that. As far as Neera maybe not wanting to take the case, I mean, all due respect and to Josh and Neera and that, but with personal issues, she could have easily said, I can't. I'm a little too emotionally involved with this particular client to take on this case. Or
I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes.
I think, as MC said, there's a lot to unpack in most of these things, but we totally agree, Hawk. There is a lot to unpack in that too. Okay.
Regardless, I'm glad she took it. And I did love her interaction with Una, and that it's like, as MC mentioned, Una is someone who's used to being in control, of the situation and knows what to do in that. But she just demonstrated herself, wanting to take the stand, that she would have been horrible making the decisions in her own case. This is why no one should represent themselves. She would have left herself open to attack, and not only that, she would have jeopardized Pike's career as well.
Yeah. Draft.
Well, so because it's not my field, I just didn't know that was like two different sides of law. I was just like,
I didn't either, by the way. Yeah.
She's like, she works hard, girl boss, I was about it. I had no idea what that meant. But another thing, I love the style of the secretary or the front office person, like
everything.
Makeup and these nails. Again, I'm gonna be very basic on this because you said everything that was important. But I'm gonna say one more thing. Well, I used to run mock trials. And it was a very steep learning curve for me, because I realized that I didn't know anything about the justice system in France, because French citizens very rarely have to deal with the justice system. Very rarely. We don't sue each other at all. Like, if you have to deal with the justice system, you messed up bad because the state is suing you, and that's bad. Like, you know. So I had to learn what was like, the French justice system and all that, and to be able to run French mock trials. And the interesting thing that always like strikes me in Star Trek is that it is so deeply an American show. Like
Right.
this is American justice, so totally A to Z, like the proceeding, the room, the office, the lawyers, the office, everything. And that's at one point I'm like, are you trying still to sell us that it's a federation and it's everybody's together, or it's just basically America is like ruling the galaxy?
I mean, no, I think you have a great point. It is very American, right? Star Trek has always been very American. The Federation has always been very American. I think that Star Trek hasn't tried to hide the fact, while not outright saying it, that despite World War III and the eugenics wars, the U.S. probably came out somewhat okay from all that, and we're still at the end of everything one of the main ruling powers. That's maybe also, speaking of France, why we see the office of the president in France, in Paris, right? Like there were some countries that came out after World War III better than others.
Well, the other thing is that, let's be honest, I'm sorry for Nari and Josh, but we usually, what we do, we run both mock trials, like the same story, and we run it in the French justice system and the American justice system. The French justice system is way better at protecting people than the American one. First of all, because you don't need to pay anybody. Like everything is public, like public defendant or lawyer. Like if you like in what we call, I don't know how to translate all that, but like we have judges that are here to work, like build the file,
Right.
and basically discoveries are not done by like your lawyer or stuff like this. If you have money or not, it doesn't change anything as a citizen. Like you can be poor, you can be rich. It's not going to change how much resources you're going to have in your trial. The resources are going to be the same for everybody. And even like past like totally that, like forget that, why not like put some like Vulcan stuff or Andorian stuff or Tellarite stuff? I mean, you see them in the trial, but it's still so absolutely an American system. Like be a bit inventive, I don't know, imaginative, like throw something in that is very Vulcan. I don't know.
I was totally
there
going to bring that up.
Was there anything that was like not usual?
So if I could just offer two thoughts, I think I didn't identify something that was specifically not American, but I have a couple quick thoughts about that. The first one is, I think you're absolutely right, Giraffe, and that the legal things that we've seen throughout Star Trek have all been based off of that core Anglo-American legal traditions, which include common law, right? So like the fact that even in this episode, I think it was Lon, like mentions a case and says that it established this rule, just having sort of this system of law getting elaborated on and then decided as precedent by judges is a thing of common law. A lot of most other European countries, except for England, do civil law, just where everything is written out in statute and judges don't make precedential decisions. But the last part I wanted to say is that even in Vulcan law, I have to say, I think the writers were kind of a little bit informed by that common law tradition, which I don't mean to say is necessarily better, but I do like it. And it's because in one episode, I think it was of Star Trek Discovery, there was a sort of judicial proceeding in which, a question of fact was supposed to be decided. And it was what I was saying before, it was adversarial. Each side argued their point of view. And there are flaws and there are strengths to a system that's adversarial. But at core, it's the idea that if we can have, and it's, of course, there's a lot of problems with this, but in theory, if we can have two sides who disagree about something super important, be it civil or criminal, put on their best arguments and their best facts, and then let a judge or a jury decide between those, that we're going to arrive at something closer to the truth than just picking one person to be the neutral arbiter and do all the investigation and decide what happens. So that's the fundamental premise, and that's kind of what the Vulcan tradition seems to be too. And it may just be because
it's unification free, and like there are like a bunch of Romulans in this, so don't trust them. Like we don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Let's be honest.
1,000 years from now, so let's not racially profile. However, Star Trek Deep Space Nine had a trial each season.
Yeah.
And one of the trial episodes is Tribunal, where we do get to see a radically different system of governance and the courts with the Cardassians, which is more like a Soviet style, we're going to shoot you in the back of the head and you're already guilty at the beginning. And so there is comparative law. I mean, in Enterprise, the episode Judgment is a solid trial episode and one of the few that actually gets to a resolution. And the Klingon system is a lot like ours, but more rough and tumble.
That's one of my favorite episodes of DS9 is Worf's trial, right? When he
rules of
blows up.
engagement.
Rules of engagement. I love that episode.
And
I wanted a thing like in Lower Decks, you know, with the Horde,
The Horde of Truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the issue is, for comparative law purposes, there's just the base reality that writers in Burbank are going to write to what they've seen and experienced. So if you had someone who grew up in a civil law system in France, they're probably going to write something that looks more like the French system because that's what they know.
Or
So
fun fact, Louisiana, which is the only state in the union that has civil law.
Yeah, and ironic, there's the joke that California's close because we have a very big code. So there's a lot to unpack there. But the key issue is the writers are going to write what they know, and which is why it's going to look like the American system, because that's what they know. So I don't think it's an issue of discrimination or not thinking about.
I don't think it's discrimination.
But maybe a little
Why
lack
aren't
of
they wearing
imagination. I would
wigs?
agree with that.
Yeah, just like I'd like, I don't know, make up a little bit of things to like make it feel a little bit like it's law in a long time.
Sprinkle a little Vulcan in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, multiple options, but I don't think it's.
I would say
think they're just-
sprinkling in a little Vulcan law in this episode is why Starfleet may have lost this a little bit. Pasalk was just like went at it from way too of a logical point of view.
Sprinkle in a little Tellarite law.
Yeah, right. Right.
Dorians.
MC and Eric, quick thoughts on this scene.
I feel like I've been hit by a truck, just like La'an later in this episode, just like with everybody's
A shuttle.
thoughts.
A shuttle. We know Tara doesn't like her
shuttle.
car references.
No, I love Nira really establishes herself in this scene. You know exactly who she is, and Pike, you find out just exactly how far he'll go for Una, and he absolutely tampered with that oxygen thing. Like it was the reader that said that it was 1%. Like it wasn't actually about to run out.
The drama.
Yeah.
Drama.
Yeah, I think he tampered with it too. I really like that Pike and Nira are sort of like two sides of the same coin. They both will fight
100%.
for something to the end, and I like seeing that in this small sequence because you could see where it was going.
Yeah. I love the scene simply because of the two of them acting off of each other, right? Like these are two tremendous actors in a tremendously well acted scene. We get the line in episode 201 with Una going like, there's you being the Boy Scout again. And Pike during this scene is 100% like Captain Boy Scout that we know him to be, right? It's just so good. It's why
Boy Scout diplomacy.
Yeah, Boy Scout diplomacy.
Scout
This is why I
diplomacy.
love Christopher Pike. It's like why he's like one of my favorite characters in Trek ever. I love this scene, but even more so, Giraffe has been saying it all week. I've been saying like Yetide Badaki is just fucking amazing. The minute that we meet her in this episode, she just puts it on 100% and does not stop until this 1 hour and 3 minute episode is over. So just tip of the cap. Absolutely fantastic.
As
And
good as
that
this
red
episode
dress-
is, it would not work
That
as
dress.
well without her because she carries this episode.
Yeah.
Like
No.
so much of it.
100%. Let's move on to the trial and amending the charges, right? Because we learn that Batel is a bit of a pawn in all this, right? During a great scene with her and Pike, Batel kind of lets him know, like, listen, that deal was really good. Like, my boss, the Judge Advocate General, has some stake in this and it's out of my hands. And that's Vice Admiral Pasalk, who we also learn is like a associate or, acquaintance of Sarek, which is also really interesting. He has some other motive with this case, but Nir is now on board. She's come and she's representing Una. And then Batel, right, at the order of Pasalk, at least we assume it's got to be, amends the charges, right, adding 2 counts of sedition and now looking at 20 years in a Federation penal colony. That's on top of the dishonorable dismissal. Nari and Josh, explain what is happening here with these amendments to the charges.
Prosecutorial misconduct. So here's a nice way to think about it. Someone's arrested for shoplifting. They're told you can plead guilty to your shoplifting charge. When they say not guilty, they then get charged with domestic terrorism. BS. So
do you say PS or BS?
BS, because you absolutely need probable cause to charge somebody. And if we take a look at what sedition is, there isn't any probable cause for sedition. So the very old view of sedition from the Sedition Act of 1798, which is why John Adams was a one-term president, allowed for the punishment of those
nice
who
dig,
made...
Josh.
Yeah, well, the XYZ affair was serious, but we should have built up the Navy, not an army. So those who made false, slanderous, and malicious writings against the government, either House of Congress or the president, if published with the intent to defame any of them or to excite them against the contempt or hatred of the people. No, Una didn't do that. You then get this...
I just want to say for the legal geeks that are listening, that's the Alien and Sedition Act. It is wildly unconstitutional in a modern view of the First Amendment, but it's a really good illustration for like how our understanding of the First Amendment has wildly evolved over the last couple hundred years. This was like literally like pretty much the first act passed by the first Congress, and it flies in the face of everything we think of as a right to free speech.
Yeah. Following up with that, you get the Smith Act, which is Sedition Act Part 2, which was intended to protect the government from violence, revolution, and terrorism. Also, for those in the military, it's punishable by death to create a revolt to overthrow the government. Una does none of that. Charging her with sedition is just dropping the hammer on her to smash her into little pieces. It's purely for revenge.
Josh, you wrote, sorry to interrupt you. You wrote prosecutorial, or I don't know if Nari or you wrote this prosecutorial, sorry if I butchered that, misconduct. Is that just also another term for overreach? Like, is this just hardcore overreach on their part?
No, because prosecutors have special ethical responsibilities that any charge that they bring is supported by probable cause. And if you are just dropping a nuclear bomb on someone because they didn't plead guilty, they're violating their ethical duties as prosecutors. So this is all bad, and the fact that you have a Vulcan admiral who's the puppet master is also extremely telling. And when jumping to his closing argument about toxic, that's extreme. Nari, care to wait?
Yeah,
jump in.
I'd love to elaborate a little bit. So, so because this is a military court, I would look at the specific, I think, parallel, which is the Article 94 of the UCMJ, which reads, any person subject to this chapter who, with the intent to cause the overthrow or destruction of lawful civil authority, creates, in concert with any other person, revolt, violence, or other disturbance against that authority is guilty of sedition. So our understanding of sedition has changed a lot over time, but that's what's currently on the books if you're in a military court. What's really important to note here, though, is with intent to cause the overthrow or destruction of lawful civil authority. So we could quibble about whether or not what she did was causing a disturbance or all these other things, and those are also important elements. But there it turns, when I was watching this live, I was sitting there thinking, they haven't shown that they have any evidence of that, unless they've got like something surprise during the trial, which you're not supposed to have, like surprise witnesses. That seems a little dubious. And in fact, during the trial, they don't put on any witnesses, any evidence to try to show that Una, much less Captain Pike, had any intent in doing what they were doing to overthrow Starfleet or the Federation. So I agree with Josh here that this is preposterous. And most of the time in real life, it's really hard to prove that a prosecutor brought a charge without probable cause. This is fiction, though, and we get the benefit of seeing everything that what we see is true. So in this case, I would agree that this is a case where they're bringing these sedition charges, and they have no evidence to prove a critical element. Prosecutors are supposed to have the probable cause to prove every element. And somewhat interestingly, the DOJ, for example, has an internal policy of only charging when they think they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which isn't necessarily ethically required. But so here, certainly they can't prove that beyond a reasonable doubt if they have zero evidence, not even little evidence. The last bit I want to note is that the fact that they're amending these charges apparently on the eve of trial is also a really big problem, because you have a right to mount a defense. And if you get slammed with new charges that you haven't been able to form a legal theory for, haven't been able to gather evidence in your own defense for, like the eve of trial, that's not right. And it's somewhat topical, the Speedy Trial Act right now, but the Speedy Trial Act guarantees you a trial within a maximum amount of time, but it also guarantees you a minimum amount of time, which I believe is 30 days in order to mount your defense. So if they amended these now, she should have gotten one more month to get her defense ready.
It's the future. Everything goes faster.
Yeah. No. Now I want to say something that some of you might be shocked, because the actress who plays Nira, the defense attorney, does a great job. As a lawyer, I despise her as an attorney, because she's putting the I in client. She doesn't give a damn about Una. She actually has the audacity to say, I am not doing this for you. I am doing this for me. BS. No. You're supposed to have a duty of loyalty to your client, not to whatever lost cause that you have that you want to wage war to vindicate. The issue is your client that you have to defend. And the fact that she says that, fire her. Because we have conflict of interest rules. California rule is 1.7b, and I'll just read the relevant section so we don't get into all the commas. But a lawyer shall not represent a client if there is a significant risk that the lawyer's representation of the client will be materially limited by the lawyer's responsibilities by the lawyer's own interests. Here you have a political activist who is trying to score political points for her cause and not represent her client. She is the wrong lawyer to handle this case.
I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I want to highlight, I think there's like the scene in between Admiral April's testimony where it seems like Una is really surprised by a strategy that she's taking there. And so I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. I just want to highlight, like, there's a long and storied tradition of criminal defendants becoming martyrs for causes. And a lot of our landmark cases are people who were willing to not plead in order to take the case that challenges a law as unconstitutional. But they did so with their lawyers, telling them that's what they were doing, and that's the main thing here that I agree with Josh that I have an issue with. Is it seems clear from that scene with Admiral April that they didn't have a heart-to-heart beforehand to explain that this may not be like in line with your personal interests, and this may be not the winningest strategy, but it's really good for this cause. Are you on board?
Right. Nari, you actually have a question from the chat from Haven. Do you think they did mention the new charges prior to the trial, which, I mean, we do see in the scene, but maybe even during a private meeting, AKA she knew the charges as a possibility if she had pled not guilty? Do you think that happened?
So it may have happened, but formalities matter a lot in law. And so the fact that they were introducing the new charges at this, which I assume is like an arraignment where they take whether or not they plead guilty or not guilty, that's a really big deal. It should have started that clock over, even if they had previewed informally to her that they might bring these charges. I also want to note that they essentially bring charges during the trial, which was because they did not charge her with conspiracy originally, because they did not implicate Captain Pike. But in the middle of the trial, they start implicating Captain Pike and essentially add the charge of conspiracy. So you definitely can't add charges at the arraignment and then not give them 30 days to prepare. You certainly can't add charges in the middle of trial.
Yeah. Other thoughts on this episode? Not on this episode, Jesus. On this scene, Hawk.
I really have nothing more to add to that. Yeah,
that's fine. This is one of the episodes where you're allowed to hit the pass button, like
right.
Draft.
I created a pass button, so you can pass.
But I do agree, like, Pasak seemed to be overreaching in that. He seemed to turn more into Nora Sati at some point than a Vulcan prosecutor.
150%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Draft.
Yeah, that's only my that's one of my minus point on that episode, and I think we were talking about it. Like, our chat is like the Vulcan admiral is like cartoonishly evil sometimes.
He's
You're
very
like,
cartoonishly evil.
you're
yeah.
like, what are you doing? Like, what's your angle? At one point, I was like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, they established that, I don't know if we're gonna speak about that. Like, Spock doesn't like him.
We
Like,
are.
there's a
Yep, we
clear-
are. Yep.
Oh yeah. So, but it seems like he is on the personal like vendetta against Una, and that can be linked to personal biases. Like, and I do like the fact that there are hints at like this very totalitarian Vulcan vision of things, which we always kind of like felt.
You know how
somehow?
Draft, last week how we were talking about oh no, I can't talk about that yet. Never mind. I can't say that. I'm really
That's
glad that I
Gabriel,
caught
like we were talking about something that is like
I'm really glad I caught myself.
yeah.
But you know what? But my headcanon for Pasalk was that he's got a vendetta because he got passed up to command the Enterprise ahead of April.
Oh,
That's my
okay.
headcanon.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
They're both vice admirals, like,
Yeah. But yes,
Could I throw
Josh,
a quick
absolutely.
thought out there, just based off what you're saying, Giraffe? Because I think it's a really great point. There's an alternate theory that just what you said made me think of here, which is, if he's representing kind of the consummate Vulcan, whereas Spock is representing someone who has both the Vulcan and the human world and has come to terms to a large extent with emotions. There's a Thomas Aquinas quote that I think is very suitable here, which is that justice without mercy is cruelty. And so I think I said this way back when we were podcasting and thinking about what kind of arguments they might bring. But, there is such a thing as prosecutorial discretion. I think the easiest thing that they could have done in this scenario is not prosecute. And in this circumstance, I think Polk, is that his name? Sorry, Polk?
Pasalk.
Pasalk, thank you, sorry.
Pasalk.
Pasalk is representing that justice without mercy, that he's just saying, I see a violation of this law. I don't care whether the law is just or justified and whether we should continue to enforce it. We're just going to apply it and disregarding everything else. And prosecutorial discretion is a way that, at least in our American legal tradition, we do try to bake in some of these things that are not strictly legal considerations, like whether or not the community cares about this anymore and whether or not it does a service to them.
I do think that it comes also to what I was like talking about, is that they have a Tellarite, they have humans, they have Vulcans in that.
It's the three founding members of the Federation.
And everybody must have such different concept of what is just, what's mercy, what's allowed. You already see it between humans of different culture, right? Like justice systems throughout the world, like some concepts are the same, but some vision of the concept may vary wildly depending on where you are and from which culture you are. So I do think that it was kind of interesting to see a Vulcan there and having that glimpse of, it's the law, you don't respect the law, you're guilty. Yeah. End of it. Why are we discussing this? Which again raised the question of how Vulcan society functions and how much trauma Spock had to go through in his childhood. Let's not talk about Amanda Grayson living there, but I think it brings an interesting question. Yeah.
MC.
Well, I think just putting aside what is actually legal in our real world, which I know is hard when we have the legal geeks on here. I think everything that Una is going through on both sides really speaks to just how discriminated against people who are augmented on.
Yes.
And one thing that really stood out to me in this episode is sometime during the trial, I can't remember exactly when, I think the judge is talking, and it's almost word for word what the judge said in Dr. Bashir, I presume. Bringing up everything about Khan and, all of the stuff, the eugenics wars.
I think that was very much on purpose.
It was very much on purpose, and it chills me to the bone that it's been how many, hundreds and hundreds of years since one man did something, that they're still bringing it up, that it's still forming this prejudice for a vast number of people.
Not
so it
one
might just
man,
be
though. not
No.
one man. He had a
Well-
whole army of augments.
Well, I
to be
mean, they're
absolutely fair.
They're always bringing up Khan, though.
No, he was
He
the leader.
is- he
so
is-
he's
he is
the
the one
face
who's
of
always
the
brought up.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. It's almost like the law is formed in such a way that it's like we're totally non-discriminatory. We're perfectly legal, except for this. This is the one thing that like we have complete blind spots to.
Because there's always
And-
the one thing.
Yeah.
Or
And-
several things.
Yeah, and with Nira, she's so determined to like this is why I'm saying that Una really should have planned things out ahead of time, because like Una's whole thing with this is that she didn't want to live a lie anymore, and working alongside Nira probably would have been like the perfect thing to have done, but to have actually it had like more time to prepare for it than just the Una getting arrested. Just like, yeah, I think that we're definitely seeing like an example of just how discriminated against augments are.
And Stress Free K in the chat made a perfect point, right? They had to prosecute, right? Augmentations are so despised and feared in Starfleet and the Federation. They felt compelled to make an example of Una, especially when she doesn't take the deal.
Well,
right?
is it an example if nobody knows about it?
Well, they weren't going to know about it until they didn't take the deal, right? Because they were going to seal her records. But the minute that they don't take the deal, then you could see on the Enterprise like this is being televised for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So
And Haven has also brought up in the chat that this is very much related to like the LGBTQ plus community. I think like this episode, if you talk to anybody from any marginalized community, they will say how this episode relates to them in some way.
this hit me hard as a
That's
Jew.
what I was
Like
gonna
hit me.
say,
Yeah,
super
they hit me
a
hard
Jew.
as a black person.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode really like works so well generalized to just anybody who's been discriminated against. But yes, I do agree. Like there is very much an element of like the don't ask, don't tell cases, like cases
I
where
was
people
just
were
going to
being...
say, MC, I think that is the closest legal analogy. There obviously there's a lot of analogies to all the different groups that have been discriminated against over the years and our evolving understanding of how these what these legal promises mean. But I think that's got to be the closest one, especially with her line of "I didn't want to live a lie anymore."
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why I think that Nira and Una were past lovers, because Nira, like they parted because Nira wanted to live out and proud. Meanwhile, Una wanted to keep a secret to serve in the military.
Great.
I mean, like that's barely subtext.
Great way to put it. Yep. Eric.
Yeah. So I was
Oh, sorry, Josh. Did you want to? Sorry, Josh.
Going for the have a plan when you go to court, a good example of how that actually works is the cases from the late 60s dealing with birth control that ultimately led to Roe. And granted, those cases are getting attacked, but those who wanted to get birth control actually came up with a plan for, I will go buy this. There were lawyers lined up to take the case up, and there was a coherent plan in place for this is how we're going to take on the state of Virginia and their anti procreation medications and everything. And like that, there's a good plan on how to challenge a law that you think is unjust, as opposed to I will wing it.
Fair. Yeah.
I did want to also say, MC, because you brought up the Dr. Bashir, I presume, episode. I want to just make sure we loop back to that at some point, because I do think that while I will have some critiques about how what the defense did and how this trial went down. I do want to. I feel like the writers did feel constrained, because by the time of Deep Space Nine, this regulation is still on the books. So they were constrained to the sense that the result could not be this regulation is overturned as inconsistent with a higher law. We can get to it later. I do think there are other things that they could have done, but I think that's a significant constraint here, and also pretty depressing.
It
is.
is.
It means that they're going to live for like another 100 years.
You're absolutely right, because it's not even just the Dr. Bashir episode, but it's also Dr. Bashir, I presume, but it's also in the season finale of Prodigy.
Prodigy, yeah.
Yep, with Dahl. So, Eric, sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so I remember watching this and looking up, hearing the extra counts with sedition. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I looked, I swore, sorry.
Oh boy, whatever will we do?
And I was looking at it, I was like, wow, that's really like that was really piling on to Una, and it made me think about all the civil rights like trials that I remember seeing in like movies and stuff, and I'm like, they're using her as an example, like they're trying to scare anyone who would try to come out and be part of Starfleet, which is unfortunate, and it was heartbreaking, but I knew where this was headed, like just from all those tropes that we've seen in those civil tropes, like they happen in real life. God, I hate saying that, and they still happen today. So, it's heartbreaking to see this and to see. I knew where it was headed as a person of color. Like as Draft said, that like when we watch these things, we're like, we know where this is headed. Unfortunately.
But a great way to discredit the prosecution is to bring a motion to dismiss on those specific charges, being able to say this is not supported by probable cause, because then you can make the state look like overreaching jerks to the judge and kneecap them out of the gate. But again, motion practice is not sexy.
Fair. Let's talk very briefly because we do need to get to the trial, but I do want to talk about this scene, and we'll start with the Stranger Pod crew first because it's less law talk. Some good moments in this episode, right? Pike sit down with Batel, who warns him about taking the stand and how that can only hurt Una. Spock and Pasalk sit down, and Mbenga being able to read their body language. It's so, I love this moment so much. And then La'an's role in this whole thing. What did we think about these moments, Hawk?
Sorry.
Pass.
I think I might pass. Maybe I'll get it.
Go ahead, Draft.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I have many opinions. So first of all, Uhura badass, like standing up to the security officer. She's just an ensign, and she's just laying down the law. She's like, "You're gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble. This is not something we want to do." And I love the fact that she's vindicated at the end by the fact that yes, it would not have helped. And I do like this little scene because usually in Star Trek, you see them play fast and loose with everything, being like, "You're my friend and we serve together and we're sisters and I'm going to do it for you." And I like the fact that Uhura is like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And that lad is like, "Okay, fair enough," and leaves. I was like, yes, positive, healthy relationship between people working together. And I was into it. I think it was a small scene, but it was a very important scene to change the dynamic that we usually see between people and build the character and how they interact. The other scene I disliked but liked was the scene with Ortegas reading the Vulcans. During Quality of Mercy, we're like, "Oh, this is like alternate timeline Ortegas, and she's a bigot because she's matching like the original penis." No. She does have a bias. She does have, and it's not implicit. It's like a totally clear bias about Vulcans, and we see her make fun. And I loved how Mbenga is redirecting her instead of judging her and telling her, "No, you're wrong. What you're doing is not cool." He's like, he's your colleague, he's your friend. We serve together. Like,
It's a learning moment.
Respect him.
Yeah.
You should respect him.
Yeah.
He
He's a
was
real
like,
ally.
"This is not how. That is not what is going on. Like, look, this is what is going on." And still hoping to like diffuse and teach and reorient it, like I don't know, like put her in a different vision of what's going on. And it's very telling. He knows Vulcan. He lived on Vulcan. He studied on Vulcan, and most probably he knows why Ortegas has that bias, which we don't know, but maybe he does know. So I thought it was a very interesting episode, because a very interesting scene, because it gave so much depth to these characters, like little things, like insight into their character, how they see things, how they interact. Beautifully acted, by the way. Again, Spock was like, like that little like very Nimoy in a way.
It was
Like-
that whole scene was very Nimoy.
Very
I
Nimoy.
thought I was watching Nimoy in that scene. It
Oh, Nimoy was never that
Go-
jacked.
goose. Okay, minus the shirt almost ripping off his
all the
chest.
cigarettes, you know. Jacked.
Yeah.
He's thick. He's not jacked anymore. And we love this. I have to say, this is not a negative dig. It's
Oh,
positive
no, I-
compliments. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We absolutely love seeing this. But yeah, MC.
I love everything about this. I feel like in these first 2 episodes, we're really establishing just how fucking professional Una is. I'm not apologizing for not Una. Uhura is. I'm not apologizing for swearing.
As you should.
Uhura just in the first episode, she's all like, stay away from my console, and in this, she's like, I'm not going to break the rules for you. You don't want me to break the rules, and I love La'an's role in this episode because I feel like La'an is in every other Star Trek trial episode except for this one. Because in Star Trek trial episodes, there does tend to be like that, we found the evidence of that somebody, made up, or, somebody's trying to frame you, which is what La'an is trying to find. But that's not the way that this trial goes. This trial goes, by going through the books and actually like looking up the law and trying to find how to solve things. And I really like that. I like that we kind of have that misdirect with La'an. And it also ties to, her emotional story with Una. And that scene with Spock, that scene with Spock and Ortegas and Omega is better than every single Spock scene in the last episode, just combined.
Yep.
Like, it is just so wonderfully, perfectly Spock. And this whole thing with Ortegas, as Giraffe was saying, tying it to Quality of Mercy and her prejudice against Vulcans. This makes me, if we're going to get any Spock episodes, I want one with him and Ortegas having to work together. Like, come on. Like, well, first of all, Mortegas, but also I want to see them have to work past this prejudice.
Have they ever really interacted on the show?
Not
Barely.
really.
No.
No.
Barely. Except for like last week.
I'm hoping they're building towards that. That's a great point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she can have a styles, as in balance of terror moment, and realize, oh, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Which is part of the big message of Trek, that people learn to work together and overcome whatever hang up that they had, and it's an opportunity.
Yeah. Eric.
Yeah, like everyone said earlier, I love the Uhura La'an scene. I loved seeing Uhura becoming her own self. Like, we see where she's becoming, like who she's becoming, and it's totally there, and it's awesome seeing this little baby version of her. The Mabenga and Spock and oh my god,
Ortegas.
Ortegas scene. How did I forget Ortegas?
You drew her.
I know. I'm sorry.
We're all tired.
know.
It's June. It's fine.
I loved it. I love that it's going back to that prejudice, and I do really hope that we get to see why she has that prejudice, and hopefully working past it. I love that Mabenga is an ally and trying to, maybe in Quality of Mercy she didn't have someone to redirect her and like make her see something else. Like, I love that he was there to be like, you know what you see is maybe not what you actually know. No. So that was cool. I loved it.
Yeah. It's a good thing, right? Uhura didn't obey La'an's orders for personal logs, right? Because that could really hurt the trial. Josh, Nari, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to really quickly contribute a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, you can continue those as well. Absolutely.
First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to the show writers for mentioning an actual legal doctrine, which is the fruit of the poison tree. It is a real thing. If the government unlawfully obtains a piece of evidence and then gets more evidence from that, based off of that, all of the evidence can be excluded if the defense brings a suppression motion. That's like, I can think of hypothetical as like, you unlawfully search someone's house, found the note that says all of the evidence is hidden here, and then they go and get that evidence. But that would be like the silly kind of comical example. But so that's a real thing. I did want to say that that doing your own illegal search was not necessarily the only remedy. It's kind of unfortunately a little bit commonplace that the defense suspects that the prosecution hasn't handed over everything. Remember, I said earlier that in criminal cases, the defense is supposed to hand over all of the evidence that they have obtained in their investigation, not just the evidence that they think supports their prosecution. And so the first evidence that they had that Una was an augment or was modified should have been in that file that they turned over, and it apparently was not. And so I'm not a criminal practitioner, but there are like motions and methods that you could bring to try to get that if you have some fact to suggest that they're not turning over everything, that something in their file critical perhaps to you is missing. You're absolutely right. Like, as it turns out, this wouldn't have been fruitful in the first place. But also, the last thing I'll just say is like, really great job, Uhura, because also just because your opponent is, you think, breaking the rules doesn't necessarily mean that you should therefore break the rules. And having that respect for that was really great.
Yeah, those in the military have a duty to follow lawful orders. Orders are presumed lawful unless they are unlawful on their face. The fact that Uhura is asked to do something that she knows is unlawful, she can say no. And so, and being able to say, I am not following your unlawful order, because she doesn't say, I'm on the hook, because I was just following orders defense does not have a great track record of in any court of what? Big deal. I was told to shoot the guy in the back. When that happened, no, he's convicted. So all bad. So the fact that she holds her ground, citing a real legal doctrine, and they actually do quote two real legal doctrines, that was very affirming.
Nice. Let's get to the court-martial. It is that time, right? Batel and Neera make their opening statements, right? Batel going straight forward. Genetic modification is illegal and dangerous. Neera immediately goes on the offensive, comparing the Federation's genetic modification laws to slavery, apartheid, religion, LGBTQ discrimination, saying law does not make something just, which is absolutely fucking true, by the way. How would we score their opening statements?
So an opening statement is not opening argument. This is where you give the roadmap to your case. You should be providing what the elements are and how the facts that you will present will make those elements. This is a TV show where they're doing it in like 30 seconds each. So we do give them some passes. But editing wise, they actually do a really good job of showing this as a good dynamic trial on what a trial could look like, with the exception of witnesses getting mixed in for testimony. Nari has some things to say about the opening statements, and I'll come back.
Yeah, I have some longer thoughts. I will try to keep them as brief as possible. I agree that overall, like the presentation of the form was pretty good. I agree. I'm giving a lot of passes for the fact that like real trials often make really bad TV. Josh is right. The prosecutor should just lay out what the elements of each of the charges they're trying to prove is, and preview. They don't get to like say what the facts are, but preview what they're going to show in order to prove them. And typically, the prosecution does not need to start their opening statement by justifying the law, which is, I think, maybe a hint here that they're already thinking about that as a problem. But unless the other side has brought some kind of a challenge that would call that into question. And this is the other reason why I wasn't fully happy with the defense's opening either. And it's not because they made these references to really important expansions of what we think of as, equal protection and all these things, and highlighting places where things have been lawful but not just. But it's not strictly relevant to the defense if they don't take the next legal step, which is to actually challenge this law as unlawful under a higher law. So how you would do that is, I presume that the Federation has something like the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, or something like the First Amendment's Free Exercise Clause. And those laws are typically higher. Like the Constitution is a higher law than statutes passed by Congress, or in this case, Starfleet regulations. And so, if you have a lower law that is inconsistent with the higher law, you make the argument that this law is unlawful and it cannot be enforced. You can also make that argument to natural law. It's not done very often, but for example, in England, slavery was first outlawed by a judge saying that, well, this is an act of Congress or Parliament. And it is inconsistent with, they don't have a written constitution, but it is inconsistent with natural law is what they actually appealed to. And the parliamentary statute that authorized the owning of people was originally struck down because it was inconsistent with natural law, which was considered higher. And so in this case, I think that the lawyer should have taken the extra step of saying that this Starfleet regulation is unlawful in view of, and they could have canonically created, finally, as a legal geek, they could have canonically created some of these core rights that we think of as so
Eric's
essential.
actually saying that in the chat. We really need a full canon text of the United Federation of Planets Constitution.
Absolutely. The canonical text of Federation law is very sparse, but this could have been the introduction of some article, some piece of higher law that enshrined for the Federation those core principles of non-discrimination or core principles of free exercise of religion, and then could have brought them to bear here. So I think that like the references to those values is powerful, but to make it relevant to this case, they had to bring that challenge. I understand, like I said, that the result couldn't be overturning the law, but there are a lot of ways in which that could have still played out. I don't want to preview too much about the end. I'll just table that until the end. Those are my thoughts.
And I will jump in because we get to Admiral April's testimony, and it's a little weird on who actually called him. So the general rule for witness testimony is, if someone's giving their direct examination, that they are your witness, the lawyer does 10% of the talking, the witness does 90% of the talking, and you want to avoid narrative answers where they just drone on and on. So you give them something very specific to answer, let them talk, ask the next thing. If you're cross-examining them, the lawyer does 90% of the talking and the witness does 10%, that you are trying to keep them on a short leash and keep them under control. So if you're trying to do a cross-examination of a high-ranking admiral who is decorated and well-respected, you want to do that as bluntly as possible of, on this star date, you violated General Order Number 1 by saving this planet, didn't you? Yes. On star date Y, you saved this planet from annihilation, didn't you? Yes. And so that's all that you need to get. And other fun fact, none of those people in the courtroom will side with the defense attorney. So if you come out swinging, any lawyer comes out swinging against a witness, those in the jury box and the judge will instinctively side with the witness and not think in terms of, well, the lawyer is right to be a schmuck. The lawyer is right to attack a highly decorated admiral who has saved thousands of people. So let's try to give him a black eye because you have a lawyer on a personal vendetta against the Federation. So again, this goes to her duty of competency, it goes to her duty of loyalty, and also it's just bad courtroom practice to attack April. So to do the my cousin Vinny approach, the way that the witness who needed thicker glasses was cross-examined, sweet, gentle, she was not destroyed. She was not humiliated. It was, dear, I think you need thicker lenses. And she goes, oh, golly, I do. Like, you wanted something more in line with that, as opposed to make enemies of every Starfleet officer in that courtroom.
Counterpoint, though, Vinny does go after a witness in that who's being particularly, like,
Obstreperous.
obstreperous. That's an amazing word. Thank you.
Obstreperous? What is
That's
that
amazing.
word?
And Hawk, I'll let you go in a second. Let me combine these two talking points as we started talking about April, right? So you guys could talk about closing arguments and April, right? Because when April does take the stand, right, but Batel asked him if he would have sponsored Una's Starfleet Academy application had he known that she was an Illyrian, and he hesitantly says no, right? Near cross-examines, as Josh was talking about, and asks about what general order is, which is obviously, we learned last season, now known as the Prime Directive. She proceeds to grill him on all the times that he broke General Order 1, which is a very popular thing to do on board the Enterprise. It's the flagship. Kirk, Pike, April, Picard, you name them, they've broken the Prime Directive a lot. Basically saying that he's hiding behind those regulations as to why he would have sponsored Una, it makes it a falsehood. This kind of causes him to make this outburst, right, and stand by his comments. Near accuses April's decision to be made out of fear and prejudice. Two very important things happen here. We learn Una didn't ask to be augmented, and April and Starfleet are made to look really bad, even if it wasn't maybe the right decision, as Josh was alluding to. And his testimony is thrown out. So, Hawk, go off about what you thought about not only the opening statements, but also April's testimony.
Well, like I said,
Not opening testimony, opening statements. Sorry,
the opening statements. Neera's was basically a lot stronger than Batel's was. Going after April, like I said, if Vinny went hard after, my Vinny comparison, he went hard after the one who was insisting that he cooked the grits in 5 minutes instead of 20. Which is something you see if you can't get the right answer, not the right answer, but getting a witness past their own obstreperousness. You see that we see that quite a bit.
Josh is dying.
But also, she did elicit part from Robert April, a pattern in Starfleet with their captains that they do have certain autonomy in decision making, which ends up playing in Una's favor later on in the trial, when we find out about when with Captain Pike and her revealing herself as an Illyrian to Pike. It makes it a stronger argument towards her pitch for asylum, right? But I think that her goal was really just to get the testimony thrown out altogether. I think was why she went hard on him.
Yeah. I don't think that was her goal. She wanted the testimony in.
Oh, I don't think so at all. No,
I think she wanted it in order to discredit Starfleet, and getting it all thrown out. She doesn't have any of that evidence now.
But it was shown. It was shown publicly on whatever the Federation News Network is, right? Everybody saw that made Starfleet look bad.
Yeah, but that goes to her personal vendetta against Starfleet, not to her client. So if she's trying to hit Starfleet to say, you guys don't follow the rules, you shouldn't follow this one, she now can't rely on that in her closing argument.
I'm just going to say, I think you're both right here in the sense that may have been her strategy. And this is why I believe it's after this scene, we have that confrontation, right, between Neera and Una, where Una seems very surprised by this particular strategy. So I agree, Josh, that there were ethical problems with pursuing there's a word for it. It's advocacy litigation without the consent of your client. And I think there's a really good chance Una would have gone along with it had it been explained to her and she'd had a chance to think about it. But you definitely shouldn't spring that strategy on your client in the middle of trial.
Especially someone that you hardcore respect, right?
Yeah.
I almost think that Neera thought that Una knew that this is what they were doing. Like, and it almost speaks
I
to
assume so too.
how their friendship isn't as, they haven't, seen each other for 25 years. Maybe Una would have done that 25 years ago, but not now.
Yeah. Draft,
And
what were you
I
gonna say?
feel too, there's like a lot of things that have been like, because it's a format of 15 minutes. Like I just assumed that there were a lot of conversation that were not shown to me. I was like, sure, they must probably had talked to me. Like, I went along. I was like, okay, I don't want to see all the nitty gritty, so just go into the courtroom and yell at each other. I'm a sucker for drama. Wait, is that my turn?
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, okay, no. So I was gonna say I'm a peasant. I know nothing about law, so I'm the average viewer who's just here for the. That's why I love that you're here, because I'm like, oh, I see it now. Yeah, that should not be a thing. But the confrontation, I mean, like the between Nira and Robert April was like so good as an acting, like the tension, like these two, imposing characters were like such, presence and leadership and charisma, like going head to head at like not head to head, but having this conversation it was so good. I was like, where is that going? What is she doing? And I was also surprised about, like, I think Nari, that's what she was saying, like at the end when she was like, oh, we need to respect the law, when she spent like the whole thing telling us to not respect the law. I was like, what? But okay, why not? I was like, pivot. I thought that I was so surprised by April, and
Same.
I didn't know where it was going. Like when she asked, like, would you have like done the same thing if you knew? I was like, say yes. And when he said no, I was like floored. And I think it was great because we expected him to be an ally, because you like April and you think, I don't know, you think he likes Una and he wants her to be out of this, and when he says no, I was broken. I was like, oh my god, where is this going? So I do think that it gave more complexity to April, because we were all expecting everybody to be the good guy, especially Robert April, and he is the good guy. Like he says what he thinks, and but like not in the way that me, the viewer, was rooting for Una, wants him to go. I thought it was really powerful acting. It was really powerful dialogue. Sure, it's bad law, and I'm really sorry. It's the same when it's bad science, and I'm like, but the story's good. But so.
Yeah, I fundamentally disagree with the trial strategy. I mean, there were people in chat saying you can't unring the bell. Yes, you can in court, because if you say, well, we'll just throw out his testimony, they heard both sides of it. Both, that he would not have put her into Starfleet. So it's a lose-lose situation. It would have been better if they had tried making him a defense witness to support Una. And there are ways they could have attacked that, even if he was unwilling to break the law and get himself thrown out of Starfleet in the process. So there could have been different trials as a different trial strategy, as opposed to how do we alienate the jury.
I just want to offer one quick thought as a counterpoint, which is that, I spent some time trying to think of like, why would the prosecution bring this witness? And then what was the defense strategy? And I think that there's a couple sane reasons why this might have gone down the way that it did. One is that the prosecution may need to prove that her misrepresentation on her application was material. So like, having this decorated admiral say that it mattered and he wouldn't have given that recommendation can go to show that. But the other reason is that kind of like what I was hinting at previously, if the defense had gone down the path of challenging this law as unconstitutional, or whatever the equivalent is in the Federation, the government may have eventually been, Starfleet may have eventually been in the position of needing to justify the law and explain what it's called a compelling government interest when you're up against a core constitutional right like that was, if it is found to infringe on a core constitutional right. And in that case, I think it was it would have been particularly helpful to have this cross-examination in which this person is saying, oh, the reason why is because the law, and then it turns out that they break the law all the time. And so maybe what matters is that I care about the laws that really matter, but not in this case. And so it really, I think, did impeach that testimony if the government had wanted to rely on this as like, oh yeah, this decorated admiral also agrees with us that not letting genetically modified people in really matters. That could have been helpful in that respect.
MC?
Begs the question also, what is going to be the relationship between Una and Roberta April after that? Because when somebody...
I think Una understands. I think Una would understand.
Yeah, okay, you can understand, but in much, like, most probably it stings. You know?
It stings.
Yeah.
It 100%
It definitely stings. Like when, like, oh, if I knew who she was really, if I knew she was gay, I would have not promoted her. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Even if that's overturned, even if you give an asylum, you don't forget that. You know what I mean? It's like you can understand, but that's still like, whoa, you were my mentor. Like, you're not gonna stay in a relationship of mentoring and respect of like who that person is for who you are after like that kind of statement.
And I'm not saying sorry, MC. I'm not saying it's okay in the slightest, because it's not, right? What April does. But you have to imagine that these officers, and again, I'm prefacing because I don't fucking agree with it in the slightest, but you have to imagine, especially in this day and age in Starfleet, where they're still only a couple hundred years removed from the eugenic wars and Archer, and the fact that a Singh or Sung with some of Khan's offspring almost started another war, that it's drilled into these officers, right? Genetic modification is awful. It is bad. It is horrible. And it's wrong, and it's horrible, but
don't you think that means that trial should not have taken place on Earth? Because like after wars, for example, when you have like war criminals being judged or international law, like you don't do it in the country because there's too much.
Well, right, but unfortunately, it's a court martial and not like a civil trial, right?
Nuremberg was for the Nazis in Nuremberg. You know,
yeah, it was in Germany. Yeah, but for the Rwanda genocide, it was in La Hague, right? I don't know, The Hague.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say it. Yeah.
The Hague didn't exist at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we had to establish all of that in order to make war illegal. Whether it was the Japanese and their long list of war crimes, or the Germans, we had that was unprecedented. And I would encourage everyone to read Justice Jackson's opening statements in the Nuremberg trial on what they set out to do and why we actually have that criminal court today to deter that. Now, for the issue of Federation law is broken, they're not going to say that we're going to change venue to another planet, because at the end of the day, the issue is Starfleet Command's the one in charge. So when a U.S. service member commits a war crime, we try them accordingly. So now, granted, there have been issues with foreign countries wanting to try U.S. servicemen, and we've resisted that. We've tried them ourselves. But no, the right venue and the right jurisdiction was the Federation, because Federation law is what was broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're all biased. Like they all have some, like, not biases, but they all, like, we see clearly like the weight of this fear that they have from the eugenic war that is not so removed to them. Like even if it's like
it's not at all.
Oh,
But
it's
also
definitely. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm
I
agreeing
don't
with
know,
you.
it's
What you're saying, it's not far removed for them.
Yeah.
The French still prohibit any descendants of Napoleon Bonaparte from holding public office.
That's damn true.
That's true. That's true.
Okay,
MC,
so-
you've been waiting forever to go.
I have been.
Let me let you go.
In terms of April, he calls out Pike. Well, he calls out Pike, even though he should have been calling out Nira, about the fact he wanted to speak to Una's character. He wanted to be cross-examined so he could speak in her defense. But the thing is that Nira did not give him that chance, because he was being honest, and it's like, it really sucks that his honest opinion is that he had known who she was, that he wouldn't have, sponsored her. But if Nira had actually behaved like a normal lawyer, he would have spoken to all of the things that Una had done over the years and why she had been an exemplary officer. Because, I mean, we find out in all of this deal with augments, both in this and Dr. Bashir, I presume, that it all comes down to exceptionalism. And it's always, to the individual, if they're, important enough to Starfleet to actually, stay around. So yes, I've been waiting to say that for a long time. Nobody had brought up that April really wanted to speak about Una.
And he did it. He says that to Pike later on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Court would have been helpful. Court would have been helpful.
Yeah. And I really want to say how beautifully put together this entire episode is, because courtroom episodes can be really, really stodgy, and they really kept this very dynamic. I particularly like the music in this one. At one point, I messaged Nami and said that it made me cry. And she's like, that was the point.
Yep. Eric.
Yep. I again, as a peon, I thought the scene was very, very well acted. It was interesting watching the defense sort of push April to sort of dig in his heels and become that hypocritical captain who's like, I am the law. I am the law, like Judge Dredd.
Thanks, Judge Dredd.
So I wonder if that's sort of what she wanted. She wanted to show how obviously it was what she wanted to show, the hypocrisy of Starfleet and how captains can say one thing and then do another thing. And I don't know. I thought it was a cool scene as a peon.
Same.
Yeah,
Peon's power.
Peon here. I'm gonna rarely touch on this because from a peon's point of view, I 100% thought that Neera's strategy here was to get April's testimony thrown out and show the hypocrisy of Starfleet, and to make that board that was sitting up there above everybody look really bad. I thought it was brilliant, because General Order 1 and the Prime Directive is bullshit, which is why captains break it all the time. It should be broken. This genetic modification law shouldn't exist. That's a whole nother point. This is brilliant because, listen, I think we all agree, right? Is April wrong for his way of thinking? Yes. Is he a bad person? No. Right? Like I think he still loves and respects Una, right? Like they're friends. Same thing with Pike. He was put in a really shitty position, but it was a position that really worked. And I think at the end of the day, at least from the public's point of view who are watching this at home, because they are, was a really brilliant strategy by Neera. So I know that there's probably other thoughts on this, unless they're really important. Can we move on, or do you guys have any other thoughts you want to touch on this real quick?
Quick on the offering 3 character witnesses. Extremely.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay. That's the next topic.
I'm getting to that. So speaking of those, the next 3 witnesses are Spock, La'an, and Mbenga, all who have glowing things, obviously, to say about Una, because she fucking rocks. We get La'an's testimony about how Una rescued her, and yes, she is related to Khan. Spock talks about the moment they met, which is a great reference back to the amazing Short Trek Q&A, and his first day on the Enterprise as an ensign. And then Mbenga talks about her compassion when it comes to privacy and personal matters, going back to Rukia and keeping her in the transporter buffer while trying to cure her cancer. Knowing what we know happens later in this episode from a legal standpoint, Josh and Nari, were the testimonies important to Neera's case?
It's dangerous. So there's something called character evidence in the law. And you cannot, the state is prohibited from offering evidence of bad character because they don't want to show conduct in conformity therein. That
basically you have to prove the crime. You can't just say, isn't this person super bad?
Look at him. He's squiggly looking. That's what people think of him. Everyone thinks he's a criminal, therefore convict him. Well, they can't do that. However, if you put on character witnesses to say good things about you, that she's the best, you now open the door for bad character to come in. So they're playing a dangerous game. That now, granted, this supposes that there could be any bad character out there, and maybe Una's been on the side of the angels her entire life, and there's nothing bad that she's ever done, and no one to dislike her. But it's a super risky legal strategy to do that.
And my thoughts on this were, I agree with Josh, but I think in this case, again, we have the benefit of a television show where we can accept what we see as true, and the government did not have bad character witnesses to put on. But the other aspect here is, again, if the defense had gone down this route that I mentioned of challenging the law, the government could have still mounted a defense by showing that they had a compelling interest in having this law in the books and enforcing it, specifically in Una's case. And if you have these witnesses who go up and explain how she's been nothing but the most impeccable person and officer, it would serve to undermine any argument that the government would have that having Una or having someone with genetic modifications in Starfleet is bad for Starfleet security, or is bad for morale or discipline, as another bit of a nod to the don't ask, don't tell thing. And if you have that evidence to show that it had, if anything, a salutary effect on all of these values that the government would be putting forward as potentially compelling government interests, that would have really helped. So I do think that, especially because, in the benefit of hindsight, Josh, it didn't actually backfire. This turned out to be a good move.
Still dangerous.
Yeah.
In actual trial practice, think carefully about it.
Hawk, the three witnesses.
Three witnesses. I don't know if the testimony was important to Nira's case. The one thing I kept focusing on was what they weren't saying, and it was basically when did they know that she was an Illyrian? And I think I love the editing between all their testimony, and that that's one thing I kept waiting on is that question gonna get asked? Surprisingly didn't, but their testimonies about her were obviously amazing on that, because she's great and they know her from so many different points of view, like Spock on his first day, and he brought up the music, and Banga, about the privacy and how she's and we know she was one of the few that knew about Rakia and that, and made special considerations for him, and that he could keep trying to save her. Are they important to the case? I mean, they did establish in that how indispensable she was to them in their daily lives and functions on the ship. So yeah,
she's a great first officer. Yeah. Treff.
Q&A. I just looked for
baby.
that reference.
Yeah.
I just liked it. Listen, everything that everybody said, everybody on the chat is talking about the canon of everybody knowing a descendant of Khan, but then in Space they don't know Khan. It's fine.
Not to mention that was one starship coming across the Botany Bay, and just because, I don't think
We've established Kirk is a himbo.
Yeah,
Kirk
and
is a himbo.
Spock always freaking lies. He didn't even tell them that who were their parents. You think they're gonna tell that he's gonna tell them oh, I served with a descendant of that guy. That man is a tomb. He does not talk. He will not spill. He's the closest Trek character from R2-D2. I don't know that man. I don't know them. I've never seen them. What? Anakin Skywalker? What? No, I don't know that man at all.
Spacey, there's the ready room scene where they're going he's really familiar. They
That's true.
and then we go oh, it is Khan. Then it turns out not all the history books were burned, which apparently happened in the darkness. So, the Kelvin timeline apparently glosses over history. The prime timeline, they knew who Khan was. It'd be actually seeing, let's pick on Napoleon again. If Napoleon showed up, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup because cameras didn't exist. We'd be going off of meaning.
It's a great point. Yep.
Yeah. So, leave Spock alone. It was fantastic. I love the thing. I think it was, again, a good little callback.
Togs.
By the way, Q&A, the score was written by Naomi Melvin. It was the first Star Trek to ever be scored by the woman.
And the rest is fucking history because she's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's brilliant. MC.
Oh, I love this scene. I think that La'an is a really good character witness to have on. I don't know in terms of law, but in terms of dramatics, that, if you're going to be talking about augmentation, having somebody from Khan's lineage coming on seems like it would be a good thing. I mean, it does open up La'an to maybe some interesting questions about her, but that doesn't happen until she's with Nira, not on trial. But I love the mention of Q&A, because Q&A is fire, and they had great chemistry. So yes, love it.
Eric.
I love the sequence. I thought it was shot really well. I thought the editing and music and everything was really well done. It really felt like a good courtroom scene in a regular TV show. So it was nice seeing that in Star Trek, and I want to see a West Wing version of Star Trek. Like chat.
Yes.
I want a whole series. I want a whole series. My wife is a Gilbert and Sullivan actress. She has done multiple Gilbert and Sullivan shows. I have done backstage and built the sets for it. We are a Gilbert and Sullivan family, so any mention of Gilbert and Sullivan is welcome in this household. We love it. It is amazing. So I loved it just for that. I have nothing important to add to this except Gilbert and Sullivan and Q&A. Because
you should have sung more, right?
Yes, they should have referenced, even though it's in the future, Picard and Worf singing Gilbert and Sullivan in Insurrection, because that scene is the best part of that movie. Yeah.
I'm just glad that even Tech didn't have to sing again.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that is law.
Oh God.
MC.
Oh, let's talk about Nira.
Bombs.
Anybody singing next to Celia was getting is doomed. Let's be honest.
Doomed. Nira puts Una on the stand and asks about her time living on, and this is the important part, a Federation colony after Illyrians were given provisional membership into the Federation on the condition that all genetic modifications would cease, right? Very important. Una goes on to tell the tale of her childhood and how genetic modification for some Illyrians stopped, but didn't for others. There seems to be religious implications here. That's part of their traditions and lore. She talks about how for her family it was tradition and it was part of their, I'm not going to say religion because they didn't say it specifically there, but their customs. She goes on about hiding the rituals. Illyrians who could hide their modifications did hide them and knew if the Federation ever did find out about them and that they were augmented, they'd be arrested. Having this had actually happened to a young boy she knew, and he was just 10 years old and was arrested for having modifications. I know they talk about, Eric, the ice cream bar is late. Don't think I wouldn't have caught it. I caught it, goddammit. By the way, ice cream bar for Eric, and Nari, don't hide your cat. We are an animal-friendly show. There are animals on the show all the time. That's right. Yeah, so a 10-year-old boy is arrested here, right? This led to many Illyrians leaving, and we get a hint of this at the beginning of the episode. They have a whole planet that they modded they modded themselves so they could live on. They leave for non-Federation worlds, and those who stayed were persecuted by those on Federation worlds. Stores not serving Illyrians. And then finally just full on, like in America and many other countries, full on segregation, right? An Illyrian city and a non-Illyrian city. Because of this, Una couldn't go to a normal hospital when she breaks her leg, breaking up a fight between an Illyrian who was being bullied. She had to go to an Illyrian doctor in the middle of the night, because if she had gone to a normal doctor, they would have seen that her immune system glows and they would have been arrested too. We also learned that during the segregation, Una and her family went to the non-Illyrian city because they could pass as human. And then finally we do find out what we kind of knew. Una turned herself in. So much to unpack here. Josh, Nari, what do we think about Una's testimony here?
High risk, because putting a defendant on the stand is it's the defendant's right in a criminal trial. It's going to open them up to ugly cross-examination, so they should be very well prepared for someone to come at them with a fire axe. And I don't know if that prep took place. Because
it seems like this was a surprise to be called after having been advised not to take the stand.
I have a question for you. Like, if you can like weave it in. I don't know if you talk about. I don't read the outline, but they have like this thing like to check that. What you know it? Don't be surprised.
Oh, doesn't mean
They
I'm
have-
never not going to nod my
The
head.
perjury
at you, though.
machine? Do you mean the
Yeah,
perjury machine?
like-
yeah.
Would that be possible? Like, is that legal? Like, can we be hooked to like a lie detector while giving a?
I mean, currently not.
No,
No.
No.
Yeah. No. And there are, there are important constitutional rules against like being a witness against yourself. So like imagine being asked a question in which you might incriminate yourself, things like that. It's also, at least in the Anglo-American legal tradition, it is a really important prerogative of the jury, or if the judge is the fact finder, the judge, to be able to make credibility determinations. And so the idea that we would allow a machine, which could be faulty, could be tampered with, to just like flash yellow or red for a lie, seems highly problematic. Why even have the finders of fact there in the first place? They could just make the legal determinations and then everybody goes home.
I'm sorry. Did we assume that having their hand on that was what
Yeah.
that was?
That was
Oh,
what I did.
absolutely.
I didn't
I
assume
was
that-
going to say
Yeah.
that's
I
kind
thought
of an
that's just
implication.
what. I just thought that
since
was like that.
I got the same
it's a
implication.
fingerprint,
Yeah.
so it
I
reads
think
the records.
everybody was like agreeing that, like, because when she was
Okay.
going to speak about like Pike, she looked at the thing and everybody
Yeah.
looked at it,
Fair,
and I was
okay.
like,
And
"Oh,
she
that's
remind-
a lie
That went right
detector."
over my
She
head.
reminded him
Yeah.
that he like could perjure himself while
Yeah.
looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
But
like,
here is the
very-
thing: they did not say it explicitly, so like
Yeah.
there is some wiggle room there.
Okay, sorry
Yeah.
for the
No, it's okay.
segue.
No, that's a great point.
super dangerous, but necessary. And this is, again, the lawyer in me, because of the asylum argument, is bonkers. So I have to put that aside.
Oh,
But-
I'll get to that, Josh. Don't worry.
Yes. So if I were the prosecutor, I would move to throw all of it out because it's non-responsive. It's not relevant, because the issue is she lied on her application, period, end of story. It's a strict liability crime. We don't need to talk about any of this on why, because they're not challenging the constitutionality of that law, which would have been a more interesting discussion. And we'll get into that at the end. So I think it's high risk. And if you're going to make an asylum argument, you should let your client know in advance, because are we talking about closing argument with this now as
Not
well?
yet. No, not
Okay.
yet. No.
But it's coming. It's coming.
Dangerous, highly dangerous.
Yeah,
Fair.
promise me, Julian, that we won't run out of time to talk about the closing, and I won't
We don't
talk about
run
the
out
asylum
of
yet.
time on this show.
I
We just
mean-
go.
Okay.
We just keep going.
Just
we
go
just
until nobody's
You
in the
don't
chat and be like, "You
invite
talk
two
too much.
lawyers."
Goodbye."
No, we don't have a time limit. We learned that lesson from our
And
friends
we're
at
on
the
the
Duras
West
sisters.
Coast. They're on the East
Yeah.
Coast. They are the
I-
one with
I'm
problems.
on summer
not us.
vacation. My kids sleep until 10 now. It's great.
Well, then I'll keep
yeah,
my
go ahead.
thoughts super brief, which is just, and I want to I think other people have already said this caveat. I do want to put out the caveat, I think, for both me and Josh, that like this law is terrible.
I think we all agree
yeah,
about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
this
and
law
like
fucking sucks.
all of our empathy goes to Una in this circumstance, and like her testimony is powerful and it's moving. And if it's not moving, then I don't know what you're doing. But I agree with Josh that in order for this to be relevant, you have to have like made the motion for asylum. Although we'll explain why that didn't really make sense. So unfortunately, it's if I were the Starfleet prosecutor here, now's the time for that relevance objection. Because you're kind of like how the prosecution isn't allowed to just put on a parade of bad character witnesses. Similarly, we don't want to just let people tell emotional stories to try to gain the sympathy of a jury if it's not relevant to some fact that's in dispute. Granted, this is a court martial with a tribunal, but the finders of fact are not supposed to just be there to decide who they like best and how they want the outcome to be. They're supposed to find and make determinations on disputes of factual questions. Did this happen? Did this not happen? Do I believe this witness? Do I not? And so, yes, it's unfortunately not particularly relevant to legal proceeding, but beautiful.
Yeah. Hawk?
Yeah, her testimony was just devastating, and it exposed like the hypocrisy of the law and the Federation's kind of backing of it, like beautifully, in the fact that this blanket law, which is never really specific. It just says augmentations and that, which can mean a lot of different things, you know. It's the law that they set to protect themselves against another rise of like a Khan or all the other ones that led to Earth's greatest conflict, are still in effect and created a case system within their own backyard, and a culture that just was justified in like writing graffiti on the walls, augments and that, and keeping them scared enough that they couldn't even reach out for medical attention when they needed it properly and that. So it was devastating in the fact, and it could not have fallen on deaf ears on the judges and that, to realize that.
Oh, not at all.
As a federation and that, they were the ones, responsible for this.
Yeah. Trev?
This part of the episode ended me. Like I was already like into a good episode. I was like into it because, great acting, and I was eating it up. But I think it's the opening scene with where we see young Una with the broken leg.
Yeah.
Right. That was so powerful to have these like explanation of the adults that went through that. And I mean, you cannot not draw a parallel with everything that's happening right now when we see states that threaten to take children of their family, and if they bring them to the hospital, and they see, for example, a family with a trans child, and that they will call CPS and take them away. And there are so many implications, like abortion, if you're going for an abortion or a miscarriage, and that you're too scared to go to the hospital because you're scared of being prosecuted or put in jail while you're already going through a medical emergency. That ended me. I'm already scared. I'm gonna tell you, as a Black woman, I'm already super scared to like do any medical procedure. I'm like training my husband to throw candles at hospital if like anything is wrong with me. The state of maternity care for Black women in the States is absolutely
fucking awful,
horrible. It's worse than like countries with no medical facilities. So that resonated with me, because being scared of going to the hospital and being like, I don't know what's going to happen to me is something I learned here, to be honest. I'm really sorry, fellow Americans, but not fellow because I'm not American, but friends. And I think you can see it. Like, I do think that this episode came out at perfect with quotation marks.
Perfect in the worst possible.
Where these resonate with so many categories of the population. Being a woman and not being listened in the hospital, being a Black person, being a trans folk. Like, it's too true. And I think Rebecca Romaine had an incredible delivery of that, I guess, monologue. Her explanation, and you see how the choice she made were hard on herself, like to choose to leave hidden, and although that like they could pass. Damn, that was an incredible line, that they could pass, and they chose to pass. I mean, this is again relevant to so many minorities and persecuted people in the world. If you can pass, you're gonna take the chance. And I know that you always have people like Nira, who's gonna be, she cannot pass and she didn't want to, and will judge you and your family for passing. But sometimes you're tired of fighting and you want to pass. Like, you can refer that to so many moments in history, like during the Holocaust, people that could pass and just passed. Terrible time calls for terrible decisions, and it's horrible that episode was so relevant to so many people in 2023. MC.
Oh, hold on. I'm MC. If you don't mind, I'm gonna just because no Giraffe mentioned it, and I'm gonna go off on this a little bit because I need to. And Holocaust mentioned. I'm a Jew. We're not 100 years removed from the Holocaust. In 2018, my son was born, and not the minute, but a couple days out of when he was in the NICU, we went and had his naming ceremony at our synagogue. And as he was being named, as he was being named, the Pittsburgh synagogue shootings were happening. And for the sake of privacy, I won't say anything about details, but people in that room had people that were lost and were friends with and known. Okay. And then Uvalde happened. And I was crying for days, dropping my son off at a school, right? Not just for school because there was a school shooting, but because he was also going to a preschool that was at a synagogue, and because I'm Jewish. And Cecily, my daughter, just finished her second year of Sunday school and had a Shabbat. And because of everything that's been happening lately, we've had to have officers inside of the synagogue. So all of this is very relevant and very important. And like Giraffe said, it could not have come at a more perfect yet horrible fucking time. And this monologue hits me really fucking hard. And yeah, MC.
MC.
Eric Summers in chat has mentioned that Jessie Gender talked in her video about the passing privilege that comes with being a trans person. So yes, this is it can apply very much to a lot of different discriminated against groups. One thing I would like to point out that I don't think has been brought up yet, when Una is talking about the little boy who was arrested for being modified, she specifically said it was her best friend's cousin, and there is a long shot of Nira. It was her cousin that was arrested. Now, the thing that I would like to actually talk about during this is how much I fucking hate Earth in the Federation. Okay, there is an implication in all of this. Not only is it religious practice, but that Illyrians had to do this to survive. It was implied in this episode. It was implied in Ghosts of Illyria. Illyrians modified themselves, not just for tradition, but because the planets they were living on were so harsh, if they did not, they would die. Earth, they say it over and over again, the whole reason why they have all of these rules against augments is because of the eugenics wars and Khan. The eugenics wars happened well before the Federation. It was something that just happened on Earth. And it is something that affects the entire Federation. The entire Federation, which is hundreds and hundreds of planets. Why is Earth so fucking special that its history is, making all of these other planets having to, deny their history?
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, well, I think about this it's heartbreaking, this scene, right? Especially as, like Giraffe says, the people of color, like it really made me think about not just the last 3 years, but especially the last 3 years with the anti-Asian, the COVID fear inducing, right? And when she starts talking about the people that pass, it makes me think of my kids, because so often I've told this story before that I get followed at stores. It's weird. I wear golf shirts. I wear khaki pants when I'm out. I dress with button-down shirts. There's no reason I should be followed at stores. And when I'm with my kids, they get followed at stores too. But my wife is white, so when they're with her, they leave them alone. And that's heartbreaking, because I know she's not going to be there all the time with them. So hearing this, and that the fact that it's still going on, breaks my heart. Yeah.
And I have to say, like, Giraffe and Eric, like, you guys have it the worst, right? I'm the Una in this situation. If I didn't tell anybody I was Jewish, no one fucking knows, right? I choose to put
Same.
it out there. Yeah, MC, same, right? Like,
Well, there's points for me because I'm biracial ambiguous,
No.
and people usually don't know what to do with me. So
No,
and then
but,
they
like-
hear I have an accent, and they're like, "Meh,
right.
we don't know how to be racist to her."
But I definitely have privilege in this situation, right? Because I can be the Una here. I can pass off. I don't look Jewish. For one, my blood isn't Jewish, right? Like, my mom was adopted and raised Jewish, and I was raised Jewish by my Jewish family who were survived the camps, and I have family who died in the camps, but I don't look Jewish, so.
And like
I would like to bring up. Sorry.
I was just gonna go like the fear-inducing like segregation that they did. Like, it's happened so often. Like, you think of the Japanese internment camps in the States during World War II, that happened in the Philippines during the Japanese occupation. Like, it's just over and over again, and you hear it, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the, having the privilege of it not, being visible, in some ways, and I think that this is Una's point, why she comes out, is that it is a privilege that is had, but it is also a disadvantage because you're not being able to live as your authentic self. There is that, the fear of, I can't be honest. So I think that's kind of like the whole issue with Una.
Yeah. Let's move on to Pasok's cross-examination, right? He tries to turn everything into a much bigger conspiracy. Attempted to indict Pike and Captain Pike and the crew
Adds
of
the
the Enterprise.
charge of conspiracy
Adds
live.
the charge of conspiracy very loudly. I feel like we all know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. Was this the right part? And Nari, I want to start with you because when we last spoke a little under a year ago, you were convinced Captain Pike would probably be safe here, and for the most part, he is, right? But it turns out that might not have been the case if Pasok got his way.
So-
Cracking those knuckles. Let's go. Let's go.
No, I was right. I'm standing by it. So what's not being charged here? So I think the only thing that's really being charged here is the seditious conspiracy. What they're not charging him with, and they're not super clear, but it's a TV show, so I'll forgive them, is whether they're charging him under the other UCMJ provisions that I mentioned before when we first talked about this way back when, which were accessory after the fact. I think that UCMJ Article 78, I think. Yes. And then the catch-all Article 92, which is like failure to follow, obey an order or regulation. He's fine under either of those. The UCMJ manual says that mere failure to report a crime that occurred doesn't count for Article 78. And like, point of fact, he never actually gets in the way, literally, of Starfleet trying to enforce this provision against Una. Like, he objects verbally, but he doesn't stop them from arresting her. He doesn't hide evidence that she's Illyrian. So there's nothing that they can get him on 78. And then for 92, everyone knows that that's a catch-all that carries almost no penalties. It would never stand up if that's the only thing that you're charging him with, and it would at most be a slap on the wrist. And then when it comes to the seditious conspiracy, it fails for all of the same reasons that I talked about with Una. Like, they put on zero evidence, nor could they, that Captain Pike wanted to overthrow the Federation by not turning in his first officer. So there's no way. Captain Pike is fully in the clear, even if this charge could be added live during his testimony at someone else's trial.
Josh, you have anything you want to add to that? I saw you rolling your eyes a bit.
Yeah, I agree with Nari, and it's bonkers. And it also highlights the high risk of having Una testify because she can implicate Pike.
Right.
And
Last thing I want to say is he could have pleaded the fifth if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I was going to say no one actually pleaded the fifth in this trial.
Well, the fifth still exists.
It does. It does.
Yeah, canonically, we have no Federation law, so I really don't know.
I'm just gonna throw like one little like anecdote. So there's so many like American legal show on TV in France that judges are pretty pissed at people trying to plead the fifth in France and calling judges your honor when you should call Mr. the President of the Court in France. And
Are you f***ing kidding
it's
me?
a real problem in the French legal system is that people are so much fed American legal show that they think it's the law in France, and they're like, this is not a thing here. Like, you don't need like a warrant to enter anybody's home, for example. Yeah, they tell the police, do you have a warrant? And police is like, there's no warrant in France. Like, so just side note.
Giraffe, this is how American law becomes the law. It's just everybody thinks that it is.
I knew American law better than my own country law because of TV.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That also deeply troubles me because the depiction of American law is really bad.
Yeah, but people were like, I'm gonna plead the fifth, and I have friends who are lawyers in France, and they're just like, you do not imagine the thing that our clients like tell us, and we're like, that's not a thing. This is again not a thing.
Turn your TV off. Hawk, very, very briefly, Pasok's trial. I mean, Pasok, I'm so tired. Pasok's cross-examination.
His cross-examination, I don't know if it was meant to like incriminate Una and get her, or Pike and that. I think it has a lot to do with a certain kind of. It was surprising. Like, I remember back in Enterprise, Vulcans had a bias towards like humans and that being out in space because they didn't.
It's kind of what I wanted to mention earlier, but I couldn't quite talk about yet. Yeah.
It feels more like that. Pasok is basically attacking like Starfleet, and basically ships run with human, crews and that, and that air of permissiveness and that seems to be going on in that, and how it's not as professional as it should be. It feels like his attack on Pike and the system comes from that rather than any worry that there is a sedition or a plot or a conspiracy going on among them to overthrow Starfleet.
Yeah. Treff.
Yeah, I didn't like that guy.
I
was like,
neither.
And
did
I wanted
Spock.
to know, like,
Neither
how can
did
you
Spock.
be bold with like such eyebrows? I was like, what's the skincare? Like, what's going on in it? Like, right? I was like, I want to know, like that. That guy went like to a special planet to have like eyebrow implants because he wants to be very Vulcan. And I see everybody like Vulcans don't value their hair per se, but like the eyebrows is like the peak masculinity. So
no wonder Spock despised him so much.
And I was like, I know why Spock doesn't like you logic extremist over there, like with your fake eyebrows, like it's a toupee eyebrow. MC.
Try to top that, MC. Come on.
Pasok proves to me that the stereotype of Vulcans as just perfectly logical is wrong. It's that Vulcans are dramatic little bitches.
It's true.
They do love their drama.
They do love their drama.
They do. Even Spock. Like,
Even
if
Spock.
there's one thing that all Vulcans have in common is drama.
Yep.
I mean, have you seen like that wall that he has with the IDIC in his quarters? In which one is the Voyage Home?
It's,
or like
it's Wrath of Khan.
With made of
yes.
sequins?
Yeah, it's Wrath of Khan and Star Trek 6, I think.
And Tarek with his colors, you're like, they're dramatic bitches. Like, you know that.
Dramatic bitches, all of them.
Eric, dramatic bitches.
Dramatic bitches. It really felt personal, that attack on Pike. I don't know why.
It was.
It felt like he was
because
he
couldn't get the captain of the Enterprise.
Right? Yeah, that's all I got.
But I do think that there's something between like him and Sarek and Spock. I think there's some like internal drama. Everybody is there in the personal vendetta in that court, to be honest, including that dude. I'm convinced he is on the personal vendetta against Pike,
100%.
and it's something that has to do with Spock, because Spock bailed to Starfleet, and now he's an officer in that ship, and Sarek has a hand on it. I'm like,
I think it's a mix, right? I think it's Spock, and I think it's I'm not just saying this to be funny. I legitimately think like he didn't get to be captain of the Enterprise. There's like some kind of bias there.
I have a question for the Legal Geeks. This, because I said this attack felt really personal. Was was his point to have this whole trial so that he could go after Pike? Like, would that have been his end game?
I think so.
ooh.
I mean,
Pros
so
and thoughts.
yes, there could have been also, I think, an objection here for relevance since conspiracy hadn't been charged, and you're not supposed to use the trial for somebody else as essentially like an investigatory tool in order to gather evidence against another person. So if it was the point, it would be extremely improper. There could have been some very valid upheld objections here. And like I said, Pike could have, pleaded the fifth. That doesn't mean necessarily that I think I am guilty of something, but you can plead the fifth because you think that this prosecutor is asking you questions in order to try to incriminate you. And so I think that would have been a perfectly justified use of it.
But don't you think it shows that they don't have the fifth, and that's why they're not pleading it?
No. So I honestly think, and sorry to interrupt the question, my personal thoughts on this scene is that the minute that Pasok went on this line of questioning with Una is when Neera knew that, like, not even closing arguments, this is when Neera knew they won the case. He went completely off the rails and went completely against the case, and Neera didn't need to advise Una to take the fifth because she knew that they had won already. Personally, that's what I think.
But Giraffe, maybe you're right, because they also have lie detectors on the witness stand.
Yeah, so it's so weird to be like, plead the fifth, but you have a lie detector under your butt. Like, I do think it means that it doesn't exist anymore.
It's such a fundamental right in our system, and I'll take this position. The laboring oar for the Zephyrin Cochrane was from the United States. You have Archer as the glue for the reason that the Federation happens.
Great point. Yep.
The fact that you might have an American-centric legal system and rights is because of Archer, and how without him, as we saw with the temporal Cold War, the Federation would not have happened.
Yep.
So because of those factors, I think the Fifth Amendment in a different form still exists, as does the First, as does the Third about the quartering of soldiers. They would probably have a very different Second Amendment because no one needs a photon torpedo launcher in their garage. And
Or
do you really need that phase rifle? Do you?
No.
So
Janeway rifle. That's all I want in my garage.
But again, the concept of the Fifth and Sixth Amendments and the Eighth against cruel and unusual punishment, and they would probably have a version of the 10th for rights, going back to the states, that each planet would have their own traditions and laws that would still exist in those planets. So I do think because of, it's not just like the Roddenberry influence.
So I'm real quick, sorry to interrupt you. I'm from Michael Kwan. I guess there is a book somewhere that states that the seventh guarantee of the Constitution of the United Federation of Planets protected all Federation citizens from being compelled to give self-incriminating testimony in legal proceedings. So it's not the fifth, it's the seventh.
Okay.
But hey, hat tip.
Nice, Michael. By the way, Michael Kwan, I should state, is also a lawyer.
Hey.
Good to know.
Plot twist.
Notice I don't see that as a threat, but a good thing. So, cool.
Which makes those lie detectors then super sus under the Seventh Amendment.
I don't personally think that they're lie detectors, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm basing my theory that, not my theory, but my comments that the seventh or the fifth exists in the Federation based off that it exists in a lot of other sci-fi that we watch, and it was that the fact that it was in Battlestar, and we see Chief Tyrrell use it during his trial. So
great call.
They're saying that this was a line from the Drumhead. About the seventh
there you go.
Oh, that's perfect.
Boom. Simon Tarsus. Great.
That's right.
Courtroom
yes.
episode. Should have known that. Should have done more research. My bad. Let's move on. Oh, sorry. Did you have one more thing? No? Good. Let's move on to the closing arguments and the verdict. Pasok argues as a Vulcan would. Una is guilty. The crew hit it, and that finding her so is the logical thing to do because logic. Neera finally shows her hand and plays the asylum card. Using all of Una's testimony as evidence that from a young age all the way into her time as Starfleet, Una was requesting asylum for persecution and finding that asylum within Starfleet. Neera asks the court to uphold that law because she's stating that Captain Pike granted her that asylum. And And while Starfleet says that the anti-genetic laws may be antiquated, they're still there for a good reason. Una is granted asylum and found not guilty of all charges. What did we think about this conclusion? And Legal Geeks, was it legally sound?
No, it's wrong. And the defense attorney should be disbarred or taken up for a disciplinary hearing because she lies to the court. You can't do that. You have a duty of candor to the court to tell the truth and make an argument that's based in law or in fact. And she assumes facts, not in evidence, by saying that Pike gave Una asylum. That is never established at any point of the story. It's a giant inductive leap because what Una said to Pike is never discussed, and you do not have a hearsay statement or a non-statement from Pike. You cannot have an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So you would need Pike to establish that fact. Moreover, you just don't do surprisery and say, Your Honor, this was all asylum. It's like, that's not in the jury instructions. There was no briefing on that. That's the sort of thing that would have been done in pretrial and could have knocked out the case from the beginning. So the fact that they went to this extreme and you have a lawyer skirting, if not outright lying to the court, is highly problematic. So I was just cringing because that's not how asylum works.
So yeah, I want to take that specific part because while obviously I'm quite happy that the tribunal rules in Una's favor, and I want to get at the end of this, I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to get at the end of this to I think how they could have done this. This made no legal sense. I'm really sorry, and I say that with all love for this show and this episode, which is, there is of course there are actual laws that govern how we grant asylum. People can petition for it, and it's a big thing throughout all of Star Trek. That Starfleet vessels are essentially interpreted as being Starfleet a Federation soil, so that if a person sets foot there, they get to apply for asylum or request asylum. It's a really big deal. It is not, however, an affirmative defense to any of the crimes that she's been accused of, nor can you apply for asylum from law enforcement. So I want to give the most charitable interpretation here, which could be that, she has been threatened with exile, which I'm going to interpret to be like a form of deportation, that you're not allowed to have genetic modifications and be in the Federation, in which case that you could definitely apply for asylum. I'm saying that you are fleeing persecution elsewhere. I get to stay in the Federation. But that's what asylum is about. It's getting essentially the right to stay, permanent residence, things like that, in this place in the Federation or in the US, because you've been persecuted for being a member of a protected class or for your political views somewhere else. It is not a defense if you're being charged with, for example, in this case, fraudulent enlistment or appointment, that you can say that, except like I've said, it could be a lot of these facts could have been very relevant when it came to an actual challenge to this law, as unlawful under Article something or another of the Federation that we don't have, I think, canonically. But presumably, because it's like we've been talking about, these are core rights. I think they're not just artifacts of the American legal system, but core rights that you shouldn't be discriminated against by your government, that you should have a right to practice your religion. And so presumably those rights exist somewhere. And if they had brought that challenge, a lot of these things would be super relevant, including, like I've said, whether or not the government has any interest at all in preventing her from being in Starfleet, or whether she's owed an accommodation for her religious practices. And so the way that I think this could have ended, while still keeping in canon the fact that this regulation remains on the books, is at least two ways. The first is that the defense could have brought that challenge to the law, have made this super compelling case, bringing in all of the things that we've talked about where, throughout American history, but also even in Federation history, although I guess we haven't gotten there. But for example, in A Measure of a Man, they make the same allusions to our expanding views of what people are and what rights they're owed. You could have had a really beautiful, passionate defense arguing that this law was unjust and unlawful. And then you could have the prosecution have a little dramatic scene where they're discussing how they're about to lose. The tribunal could have decided they need some time to consider. And the prosecution could have decided, even for bad reasons, that they want to dismiss it because they want this regulation to stay on the books. And they realize the facts are so bad for them in this case that the tribunal's about to rule it unconstitutional. And the government sometimes does that. And so that could have been a really dramatic end to this. It would have been in Una's favor, but really explained why this terrible law stays on the books. You could have also had the tribunal rule in her favor, but only as applied to Una. So because of all the facts that are presented in that specific case that show that Una and her particular modifications could serve no possible threat to the Federation or any of the interests that the government tried to put forward, they could have ruled exactly similar to how they did, which is what they were hinting at within the facts of this case. We find for Una, but it wouldn't have been on grounds of granting her asylum.
So much to unpack here. Hawk, what did you think about this?
Well, according to the Legal Geeks, this sucks. So now this ending sucks. Goodbye. I don't like a case for asylum. I could totally I could see that being the case for this. You know, that she came out to Captain Pike and said, "I am an Illyrian." Captain Pike didn't immediately report it to Starfleet and that, or send her off and that. It's like, no, he made a decision that, like, you're staying no matter what. You are so valuable and needed here. You are staying. You know, there is a case to be argued there. And I mean, like, if you look back at like TNG and Pen Pals and that, you know, with Sarjenka and that, her little cry for help, was that cause enough to break the Prime Directive?
And I would have said it would be, right? But like, yeah.
I know. I think at some point there's got to be some sort of like, discretion in each individual case. You know, whoever is the one making the decision, their judgment has to be relied on. You know, it's like, it's what they're out there to do: explore the galaxy, meet new people. You know, they pick the right people to do this, and that they have to have a little discretion to do so.
Draft.
Whoa, okay. So I didn't really understand how like they played the asylum part again because I was like, what it has to do with anything. But it did resonate with me because my father was an asylum seeker and a political refugees. And so were his brother and his sister later. So I grew up in a house with people who had sought asylum in France, and my father was still in pending of waiting like his French citizenship when I was born. So it's another clusterfuck because when I was born, my father was not a citizen, you know. And I do remember my uncle and my aunt who were doing the asylum paperwork when I was a kid. And, you know, it's something that very often people forget is a thing, that there are a lot of people that need asylum and were in real danger. And I would not be here if it was not for the asylum laws. Like, I would just not exist. My father left his country with literally what he was wearing on himself. Like, that is all he had. And my uncle and my aunt left their country aboard a boat that was made to carry animals, and they drifted at sea for months until they were able to be rescued. And then getting them back to France was thanks to my parents, who were Doctor Without Borders. If you don't support them, give them some money, who had some ties and helped them to get out of refugee camps to be able to seek asylum. So there's our laws that like resonated with me because I know how important they are for so many people. They are life-changing. Not life-changing, they're life-saving. So yeah, it was important to me. The other thing that really struck me is it's okay because she's excellent. And, you know, this whole thing, she's an incredible officer, so she should not be prosecuted. No, even if she were the poorest and the least efficient and the least providing of anything, even if she was an ensign, like we see it with Simon Tarsus on Drumhead, even if you're a nobody, it is not okay to prosecute you. Una should not get a pass because she's an excellent officer. And that resonated again with me because, you know, I got a lot of passes because I'm educated. I have many degrees. So, I speak several languages. So you're not like the others. The number of time that I've heard that in my life, that I get passes because I'm light skinned. Like, there's a huge thing about colorism. I mean, again, everybody sees that episode through the prism of their own oppression. But like colorism, like, oh, I'm light skinned. So, I get a pass. I have degrees, so I get a pass. I'm foreign in the US, so I get passes. And I do think that I was a bit disappointed that finally she get all this because she's the first officer of the Enterprise. She should get all this, even if she was the lowest of the lower
Yes.
deckers. And I know people were mad at this, but I do think that it's important to see that because that is how the world goes, and it's a criticism of it. I didn't take it as that is how things should be done. It is how things are done, and there's a nod at it because at the end when Nira leaves and like just rip her hands and just goes, I'm like, yes, she won the case, but the fact that it didn't change anything to the law is very important because sometimes that's what it is, and a lot of time that's what it is, and it's about a person, and it impacted the people around her, but it didn't change the law. And unfortunately, sometimes, well, that's just what you get. Like, my dad got asylum, but his parents died of hunger, and is that fair? No. My a lot of my aunts and my cousin died of like very curable things, because they were in a war-torn country. But I'm here, and did it change anything that my father got asylum? It changed things for me. It changed things for him, It changed things for his students, for the people he helped. But sure, it didn't solve the whole crisis and the whole thing. And the world is like that. If you expect, I do like that Star Trek for once didn't go like full like, and we changed the law and the Federation became like great. Sometimes it's bleak, and sometimes
Yep.
it's about one person
Great
and
point.
one situation.
Yep. Great point. Yep. MC.
Okay. We've established I am not a lawyer. I am a writer. I am a writer, and this is so emotional and so beautiful, and I fucking love it. It works so well for me. Was just crying buckets while watching this. But there is one thing that I would like to bring up, and that's in all of this with the asylum. I do think that we're actually looking at two different sets of laws, because you have Starfleet law and you have Federation law. And what Una is actually seeking asylum from is Federation law.
Correct.
And she
That's
is
very
seeking
important.
asylum with Starfleet. Now, I don't exactly know how everything works, but basically, I feel like this whole asylum argument is Nira basically saying that Una is being persecuted by the Federation, and by revealing who she was, even on a Starfleet form, that she would be persecuted. So that is how I feel like the whole argument was going. I don't know if it's legal. I don't know how it exactly works, but for me, for the the heart, my shrunken black heart, it works for me.
I agree.
Eric?
Like I as a viewer, as just a casual viewer that knows nothing, it was super emotional. Every time I've seen this scene, it's made me tear up. I think it's beautifully acted. I think it's beautifully shot. The music, god damn it, Nami.
Oh my
the
God,
sequence
yes.
is beautiful, and it kills me every single time. And it works for now that I know more things, I'm gonna look at it differently, and it's gonna break my head.
I think it just makes things really
It does,
interesting
it
to
does.
figure out how it actually works in the Federation.
I'm really looking forward to rewatching this after hearing everything from this podcast. Like it, yeah.
Yeah, but I am gonna go, and I will very much preface I am not a lawyer, but as far as watching a TV show and watching Batel's reactions to reading the law in the book, Captain Pike does grant Una asylum. That when on duty and in these extreme circumstances, when a ship is not home, that captains, much like Admiral April did as captain of the Enterprise, has to make decisions on the fly. When Una tries to resign in Ghosts of Illyria and says, I'm resigning my commission, I withheld this information, I'm an Illyrian. He's going, and he says, I don't care who you are. You're the best first officer in the fleet. You're staying. He made that decision, right? We lost Giraffe. We lost Giraffe.
Oh my gosh.
She'll
That's
be
okay.
back.
She'll be back.
Did she turn into a pumpkin?
She might have turned into a pumpkin. Yeah, he granted her asylum in that situation. And again, all that needed to do, they weren't at port, so they couldn't make the decision then. They're at port now, and the decision was made. From a TV point of view and science fiction, it works perfectly for me. And I know that's not the law, but I think it actually works really well when we're talking about Star Trek. So that's where I'm at. Where are we? I'm lost in my outline. Are we at final thoughts? We are.
We are.
Yes.
Final thoughts, and if we could be brief because we do need to wrap this one up.
So I'll say this. One of the San Diego Comic-Con panels we pitched this year was to do a mock trial on this. That was sadly rejected, but we will
Wait,
still be there
really?
Yeah, they rejected
I'm back.
it.
Boo! Not booing you, booing the fact that their panel got rejected.
Oh,
No,
I know.
However-
I followed the story.
but we have two other ones, and they're going to rock. And if you're there, stay tuned. So this is how I would have attacked this doing a mock trial. One, during the U.S. Civil War, women disguised themselves as men to fight. They weren't thrown out. It's like, Becky's a good shot at killing those traitors. Keep her. In 1993, 132 years after the Civil War started, we had the first female combat pilots. First naval aviator to be in a combat role, because the first ones were back in the 70s and non-combat roles, was named Kara Holtgreen. And I often wonder if the name Kara was used in Battlestar Galactica to honor
Nice.
her, because
I like it.
she did die 4 months after getting assigned to the carrier on a crash landing. You had African Americans in the military since the beginning, but in the Civil War, you had all African American regiments led by white officers. You then had segregation in the military. So through World War II, you had African American service members who were limited to duty to being porters or cooks. But one of those cooks was named Doris Miller, who at Pearl Harbor operated a machine gun like he'd been trained at it and shot down Japanese attacking planes. We are naming one of the Gerald Ford aircraft carriers after him. You had the prohibition on gay and lesbian service members, and then that morphs into Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was a way to weed out anyone who wanted to serve our country, to protect our country because of their sexual orientation. So just in looking at what we have a history of people wanting to defend the United States.
Yeah.
And we excluded them for stupid reasons. This prohibition on augments falls into any of those categories, whether it's women serving in frontline capacity, African Americans being able to serve with everybody else, and people who are gay or lesbian being able to serve openly as well. We've come a long way, and that's how I would have attacked this. And I do think it's a good episode, but man, the lawyer in me had some serious what the heck moments.
Fair. Any other final thoughts, please, if you can keep this
Yeah, I
brief.
was out, so I didn't know what we were doing. Sorry.
No,
Final
that's
thoughts.
it. Just final thoughts on the episode.
Oh, final thoughts.
You don't have to give any if you don't want to.
You know I have like 5,000 final
I
thoughts
do.
on like
I
that
just had to.
episode.
I had to put my
Pick
disclaimer. One.
Okay.
Drafts
I
like
just
we're already
wanted-
going 3 hours. We might as well go 4.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, like, it's funny because you know about the Foreign Legion in France. Have you heard of this?
I've
What
heard
it is? Yeah, so it's a corps in the army where basically anybody can enroll, and even if you're not French, and they don't ask you who you are, they don't even ask you your real name. Like, you can write whatever you want, and you can serve, and then once you've done serving, you get French citizenship, or you get absolution for anything you've done, like stuff like this. Like, they don't want to know. They're like shady people, not shady people, but they have characters in the Foreign Legion, which is, interesting when you compare like to the don't ask, don't tell, segregation in the army in the US, when like France is like, yeah, you go there. We don't want to even know your name, We don't even know like what's your citizenship. We don't care. Beautiful episode. I have to say that. I'm gonna rewatch. I've watched it 4 times. I think you
Same.
too, Julian.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to rewatch it like 2 or 4 or 3 or like 7 times more.
I was saying this to Julian right before we started recording. I know that this is going to be one of those go-to episodes for me to feel better. This is kind of be up there with like Trials and Tribulations and Balance of Terror, which I know is a weird one to put into that group. But all of these like really, really great episodes that just like lift me up, and this one in particular. And I think it's really weird that like my top 3 episodes of Strange New Worlds are this one and 2 episodes that don't take place in regular continuity because it's the Elysium Kingdom and Quality of Mercy. So it speaks a lot to how good this episode it is, that my feelings about where things are going.
Something that is good is like you compare this to like Drumhead, and we never know what happened to Simon Tarsis. We don't even know what's the outcome of that thing. Like, is he still in Starfleet? Is he like taking back to like what happened to that kid? Like, we never know. It's all about Picard doing his speeches, and we're like, I want to know what happened to the kid. Like, what's the kid? And I like to see what happened to Una, and like we can follow that person, and we can actually understand what is going to be the repercussion of that trial on that person staying in Starfleet. And that is something I want to know.
Yeah, agreed. Any other final thoughts?
No.
Good.
I guess I will offer just one closing thought. I don't have that much to add because everyone has said really wonderful things. I did want to just add that I think that as Giraffe was saying, the fact that this kind of ends on maybe not the most triumphant note is still in some ways uplifting in the sense that, because like we know that the story of the Federation continues, and that eventually like rights get granted to androids and all these other things. It's a useful reminder that it is a long and continuous journey to live up to ideals. And I don't mean that just for American ideals. I think some of these ideals are more universal for free humans, but that it is a long journey to live up to those ideals. And it's that's all I've got to say.
So you would say that it's a long road getting from there to here?
God damn it.
Sure. You beat Eric to it. I was seeing him
I was. It's all right.
Just shut up.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Go ahead.
Other than that, it's just like Trek is always at its best when it's people talking and like discussing things. And I love these episodes. And this is definitely one of the best Star Trek episodes for me, if not one of the better.
Did anybody talk about the whole women crew? That it's written by women, directed by women.
Yeah.
Women, yep. Amazing.
And everybody's talking about a woman and women talking to each other.
Made by a woman.
And it's pretty much all women talking to each other the entire episode for most of
Not
it.
about men.
Yeah, not about
Yes.
It passes the Bechdel test.
It passes it and then some. It's an A+.
The measure of a woman.
The measure of a woman. Josh, you had final thought.
John Byrne did a comic series where number 1 is a Commodore and commander of her own Constitution class ship, and it's fun because they're wearing the motion picture era uniforms, but the ship hasn't gone through refit, so it's still original series looking. Check that out. He did a.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna read that. That's awesome.
It's a good run. It's a very good run.
Speaking of good runs, this was a great episode. Let's rate this one out of 10 court-martial bells. We will go in the reverse order. Eric, your rating, and YouTube chat, give us your ratings as well.
10. Easy for me. 10. I love it. Emotional, beautifully acted, written, directed, music, awesome.
Yep. MC.
Easiest 10 I've ever given for A Stranger in New Orleans.
Nice. That's awesome. Hawk.
This is an easy 10 for me. Pacing, writing, everything's great. Obviously, there's not a lot of there's some inaccuracies in the legal proceeding, but this replaces Measure of a Man for me as the best courtroom episode of Star Trek.
Ooh.
Giraffe. Don't move too much. You might cut out
I thought you
again.
broke her.
Sorry, because when the science is bad, I'm always like bitching, and I don't want to give like a good grade because I don't like when something doesn't make sense to me. So I'm very sorry about this. 10. The costume were amazing. The music was amazing. The emotion was there. The message is here. Classic Trek. Let's go.
Nice. Nari.
I'm gonna have to say 8, and it's because
I mean, valid.
yeah,
Fair.
it's great television and it's great performances. It really is. It's just that a couple of points because I think that if they talked to me or Josh, we could have helped them come up with a better legal
That's
version
a
of the
great
story
point.
that arrived at the same emotional
Right.
places.
Legal advisors for
Are
Star
you
Trek.
listening, Paramount? Are you listening?
I mean, they don't listen to their most of the series don't listen to their science advisor,
No,
except
that's
for
true.
Prodigy.
Right.
So don't have your hopes up.
Josh.
8. I concur with Nari. I loved the episode. I loved watching it last night. It's well directed, it's well scored, all of those issues. My vein came out of my neck with a bunch of the what the heck moments with the law. So like that's something I can't get past.
Fair.
But I did enjoy it, so I'll give it 8 bells because you can only have 8 bells in a watch unless it's New Year's Eve when you go to 16.
Okay. I don't do math, so that made no sense to me, but
Here.
I agree.
In the factor of 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, the jazz. Over on YouTube, Havy gives it an 8.8. Colin gives it a 10 out of 10. Eric Summers gives it a 10. Michael Kwan gives it 9 out of 10 sustained objections. Maggie Lake gives it a 9. Tara is 6.5 gavels out of 10. Marty a 10 out of 10 easy. Trekking. Wayner a 10. Rude Parakeet a 10. Julian Brown a 10 out of 10. Easy.
Wow,
This might have been the pod's first consecutive all the crew members giving it a 10, maybe. Somebody fact check
Yeah,
me
because
on
none
that.
of us is a lawyer. Like, you
None
know
of
that.
us
Yeah, I
If
know.
one of us were a lawyer, would be like, 8.
All that stupid knowledge spoiling the
All that
episode for us.
stupid knowledge. Speaking of, let's get to the subspace to pull.
We're almost finished.
Mailbag.
We
We're almost
promise.
done.
Shipwide cadet Aurora.
Aye, sir.
This is the very long outline also. Like, where is it?
10 pages. 10 pages.
I'm so sorry.
Who wants to take the poll? Who wants to take the poll?
I can
The
do
poll. Hawk, hit it.
All right, so we asked Trek Twitter what they thought of episode 202 ad Astra per Aspera, and this is what they had to say. 80% said number 1. 13% said by the book. 7% said general order 1.5, and 0% said guilty.
Very nice. Very nice. I like that 0 down there. Nobody got hurt this episode. That's always good. We will keep it going, Hawk, and then Giraffe. Giraffe, can you take Chris's mailbag, please? Oh, no. Giraffe?
Oh, she's frozen.
Giraffe.
No, she's nope. There she
No.
is.
No. Maybe. Maybe.
Oh, I'm
I
back.
think she broke.
Oh, I hear maybe. Giraffe.
No.
Yeah.
Hi. Giraffe.
Come back to us.
Oh
No, she's gone.
Ah.
All right.
Nope. No, she just came back.
Oh, wait, she's back. There she is.
Yeah, what is happening? I don't know. Sorry about that.
Chris's mailbag.
I was just gonna. Me. Okay. Oh, by the way, Latin title in an episode. It's going in the list. I have a list of all the episodes with a Latin title.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the ones that keep me from being able to name all of the episodes.
The destiny.
So Chris wrote, I like this, but I felt that I got more character backstory in the last episode. Also, my issue with Spock coming off dumb felt even cheesier and relevant this episode. I love the way they went about the trial. I enjoy how number one's role was put forth, even in the cliche times. It was a smart solution to keeping her, but also staying with the Trek timeline. Overall, though, I think maybe a 5. It helps the flow, but doesn't stand out.
Oh, friendship
Sorry.
over.
Friendship over,
Friendship
Chris.
over.
Kidding.
Okay.
MC, can you take Fefs, please?
Seth wrote, "This is one of those allegory episodes Star Trek does since the beginning of time, and for me, it hits all of the notes. Loved every minute of it."
Very nice. And Eric with Havens, please.
Haven wrote, "This episode was one of the strongest episodes of Trek I've seen in a very long time. Honestly, has been years since I felt called out. And that even includes Discovery 304, which gave me the strength to come out as non-binary. I felt like this episode was an amazing, strong episode of Star Trek. Is it the best of Trek? No. But it is one of the strongest I have seen. Was I expecting the outcome? Unfortunately, yes. But at the same time, I absolutely loved every twist and turn. I think this episode would have been better as either the season finale or season opener."
By the way, I just will say to counter that, I do think, and I've tweeted this, and I think everybody agrees, this is at least the crew, the Strange New Pod crew, this is a Hall of Fame episode of Trek. Like, Hall of Fame, one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever. I'm going to go in the order that I see on the screen. Nari, can you take Michael Kwan's mailbag, please?
Sure. I feel honored because if I remember correctly, was this the one who said he was a lawyer?
Yes. Yes.
Michael Kwan writes, "Trek is sometimes at its best when it discards subtlety and speaks from the heart. The original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, for example. The writers handled a legal proceeding about as well as I can expect from TV." I agree with you, Mike.
Yes.
This episode is definitely on a par with The Next Generation's The Drumhead or The Measure of a Man.
Very
Nicely
nice.
put, Michael.
Very nice. Josh, can you take Eric the Red's mailbag, please?
Yes. Once I go back to the screen. This is one of the best episodes of Strange New Worlds and modern Trek. Absolutely one of the best courtroom episodes, on par with Measure of a Man. The execution of the episode from start to finish, between casting, writing, and directing, was sublime. The timing of this episode is impeccable. Would not be surprised if this episode gets a Hugo nomination.
Indeed, that would be awesome if it did. I will take Rude Parakeets. This week's episode has joined my list of the greatest of all time Trek episodes. The message is one I feel the world really needs to hear right now. Yetidi, I feel like I'm butchering her name every time, and I hope I'm not
okay.
Right. Yetidi Badaki's performance as Nira was outstanding. I also loved the Andor vibes I got from the beginning of the episode. The costumes also really stood out to me this week, so props to Bernadette Croft. Every single week, props to Bernadette Croft, by the way. Back to you, Hawk, with Yum Yum Pods, please.
Yeah, Yum Yum Pod wrote, "It's no Boston Legal, but it follows the typical beats of a courtroom drama, and that's perfectly fine. I'm glad that number one is getting some time to shine, and here's hoping there will be more of that in the season. Not really a surprise that Una was the one who informed the higher-ups about her situation, but there was a moment where I joked that it could have been that freaky little racist Sam Kirk, who has yet to appear this season. Overall, not a favorite, but I do appreciate the team giving us a talky episode with no shoved-in action set piece."
Agree with that part for sure. Giraffe, can you take NY Relights, please?
NY Raylight wrote, "Wanted to like it more, but it just didn't do it for me. It did the requisite job of resolving the Una issue while staying within the Trek timeline for how genetic modification is handled. You've got to wonder if Una has much of a chance of being promoted now that it's known that it's known that she's an Illyrian. I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season goes with a reunited cast."
I'm also going to say that there's no way in hell Starfleet doesn't promote Una, because everybody in the Federation of Starfleet watched that trial on television, and that would be more discrimination, and they're not going to do that to themselves. So that's where I'm at. Where am I? MC, can you take Collins, please?
Colin wrote, "I cannot pretend to be an objective critic here, but I can say this. I love courtroom drama and always have. Intelligent entertainment is a mental turn-on. This episode is just that for me. The prosecution did her job while obviously not enjoying what she was doing. The defense was so good. Her asylum strategy was brilliant. Her speech got a little preachy, but it was pure truth. Not surprised, it was Una. Supporting cast was, as always, enjoyable. Objectivity set aside here, loved this.
Nice. Eric, you get to read the limerick, Tara's mailbag today, please.
Tara wrote, there once was a Illyrian named Una, whose story turned into quite a Megillah? I don't know that word. She lied about her race, but Starfleet did an about face, and wow, this episode reminds me of Fecula?
Fecula. Fecula.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
I didn't hate watching this episode, but I did feel insulted by it. Not its message is, unfortunately, timeless, but its method. I feel like they hit us over the head with mallets. I will give Strange New World points for the attempt. This didn't come close to Measure of a Man for me, but that could also be because I first saw that 25 plus years ago when I was far, far less wizened.
Thank you, Eric. I'm just writing about pancakes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 'cause
1 second. It's important when it comes to Captain Battelle. Okay, where are we?
Strange Free
Yes,
World.
thank you. Nari, can you take Strange Free World's mailbag, please?
Happy to. Strange Free World writes, overall, very good episode, in my opinion. Maybe because I am stuck in wanting to see the best in humanity right now. I like the bringing it back to the Starfleet ideal. Side note, the scene with Ortegas and Mbinga was very funny. It really was. That really got me too.
It was awesome. I love that. Okie dokie. Josh, can you please take us home with Jay Woodman's mailbag, please?
Yes. The message of this episode is important and very relevant for today. Could it have been delivered better? Yes. This was a far cry from A Measure of a Man. It's like they started a great conversation, trailed off in the middle, took a nap, woke up, and sent a cramped postcard with the resolution of the conversation. I would have loved to have seen more writing, development, exploration of the immigration amnesty issues throughout and gotten more of the crew involved in the story. They missed a great opportunity to add character development backstory. Side note, the dress uniforms are beautiful, and I hope we see more of them this season.
Definitely agree about the dress
that last bit.
uniforms. Yeah, for
The rest?
sure.
Yeah.
Case closed, guys. Case closed. Case closed. This was like
4
a full time.
hours.
It was
Let's
3
go.
hours. No, we're
Yeah.
not going 4 hours. Jesus Christ.
Like a real legal proceeding.
Like a real legal proceeding. Everything I hoped. No, I'm not even kidding when I say this was everything I would hoped it would have been, and more. I really do mean that. But sadly, it is the end. Before we go, Nari, Josh, plug away. What's going on with the Legal Geeks? What's going on with you? And where can we find you guys?
So, the Legal Geeks will be at San Diego Comic-Con. I cannot say any more because I believe in surprises, and the schedule will come out 2 weeks beforehand.
They've been trying to get my panels, and I'm like, I can't tell you, I don't know.
But there will be 2, and they will be groovy. You can check us out on thelegalgeeks.com. Our social media is at The Legal Geeks. I'm starting to experiment more with TikTok and doing short analysis of movies and specific issues. And that's a lot of fun. If you look at our podcast channel on wherever you listen to podcasts, we do have a brand new one posted on Nerd Night, which was a Trek episode. And starting on Monday, we're going to start recording on Secret Invasion.
Oh.
And one of the attorneys is Mark Zaid, who is a national security attorney. And he's a good buddy. So he's been on Meet the Press a bunch in the past week, doing CNN for some reason. It's in the news. And heck of a nice guy, classic comic book collector. So I'll be with him, Stephen Tullifield, and working on at least one other attorney to participate in that. And Nari and I need to start covering Strange New Worlds with season 2, but we've been both working hard. So
It's not like you guys are lawyers or anything, right?
I'm going back to the office after this. So that's
Oh, wow.
that's
Oh my.
So we're not doing a post-pod Q&A. There's your answer right there.
I can hang out for a little bit, but there's a damages analysis that needs to be done. And I also blog on eDiscovery, so my other Twitter handle is @bowtie-law. So that's everything. Or you could also connect with me on Facebook.
I just wanted to say to Michael Kwan, we have done panel talks that had CLE eligibility, right, Josh?
Yes.
Yeah, so we should organize something like that again.
Yeah, we did for California's MCLE deadline. We actually did 2 ethics ones. So one was using Star Trek for ethics and talking about elimination of bias, and the other was on trial advocacy, and where we talked about all the trial episodes. And both of those are recorded on our YouTube channel, and so you could check those out. Where Judge Owens and Bethany Bangfield both. Bangford, I'm sorry. I'm tired.
It's okay.
We had a rip-roaring good time. And
we did an IP one too in the before times in Denver, right?
The before times.
Or Boulder?
Long ago.
Denver, yeah.
Long ago. And so, yeah, we'll be back for more. So, Nari, I know there are things that you might share.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't really have a social media presence. I'm part of the Legal Geeks though, so tweet at them if you want to get in touch with me. I just really like hanging out and talking about geeky legal things with Josh and with people like the crew here. So please keep inviting me back. I love it.
Oh, we will definitely have you back anytime that you want. This was a freaking blast. Cannot wait to talk to you guys again. I'm sure there will be a court-martial episode sooner rather than later because Trek loves them. And then we get to do fun episodes like this, which I will never forget. I had such a fucking blast. I can't even tell you. That is going to do it for our show. It's going to be a fun one next week because I'm going to host it from probably Giraffe's apartment, and we're going to have to figure out your internet so I don't get cut off. No,
Canadians take over next week.
Canadian take over next week.
And we're most probably not going to agree next week also, so stay tuned.
Yeah, hey, 2 weeks in a row that you got full agreement from the pod. That's going to change next week. Legal Geeks, Josh, Nari, thank you so much. Also, a big thank you to our executive producers, Commander Chris, Simon Steger, and the Chief, Ernesto Castagna. You guys rock. For MC, for Hawk, for Eric, for Nari, for Josh, for Giraffe, so many people. I'm Julian. Live long and prosper. Majram. Good night.
Thanks for beaming into our podcast today. If you want to keep the hailing frequencies open, you can subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. Like what you hear? Put in a good word with Starfleet and leave us a 5-star review.